All right, Jennifer, we'll start.
I got visual aids in case you guys have any questions.
Okay.
So good morning, commissioners, I guess I should say first, and everyone else. The main thing that I asked for an increase on my budget is toxicology, because we're doing more cases every year, and so my toxicology has been going up. I was concerned earlier in the year about my autopsy line item, but I think we finally kind of leveled out on that, and we'll be able to squeak in under this year. And I'm hoping that this next year we'll be back to more of a normal year. So I don't think I need a line item increase there. But I did ask for a separate line item now for body bags, because we've been trying to take it out of my supply budget, but body bags are just so expensive. So I've asked for an increase there. And if we don't want to do a yearly line item, we could do every couple of years, just a bulk order. But it's easier to kind of hit it when they have the sales. So what I've been using now, the main thing I use are these as body bags, but they're actually body shrouds, and I get rolls of them. So the only difference between these two is the white one is for smaller people and the blue ones are bariatric bags. So I get, it depends on which supplier I can get it cheapest through, but I get between 30 and 40 bags of rolls for about $200. And then you have to have shipping on top of that. And then I have these lovely midweight bags, which are zippered, and they also have handles on them. But they're anywhere, depending on when I get them. I try and get them on sale. They're about $25 a piece. And so they've got, handles and zippers. But it depends on when they're on sale. And those are my midweights. And then this other one, which I recently tried, it's a heavier weight, but it also does the handles and the zippers, and it has more of a lining. But you can't use it in the winter because the wear makes it brittle, which it does. So, and then
That doesn't look so plasticky. Is that more of a?
It's more lined.
And it looks more of a. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
It's plastic.
Yeah, still plastic. So, and then I have the super heavy duty ones that we use for mass fatality incidents and situations where people are badly burned because of the poking hazard of the broken bones going through the bags. But I have cases and cases of the extra heavy duty bags. But those are for a FEMA purchase. So the midweight bags and the shrouds are what I really need the most of. And so that's why I asked for a line item increase there. And then just for special budgeting this year, I recently discovered that the truck tires on both of the corner trucks, one of them has passenger tires on it, and the other one has light truck tires, and neither one of them have great traction. So I've asked, I contacted who the county uses for tires and found out the ones that the sheriff's office has and just priced those out. But that would just be an extra expense for this year.
Sue, do you have any questions?
I just one, Jennifer, and it has nothing really to do with the budget. Were there more autopsies due to COVID or?
Our caseload went up about 30% last year. I'm sure that some way they're all related to COVID. We did not autopsy more people that had COVID. We only had 3 cases of people that died with COVID in the county. I think when they started lifting restrictions, people were traveling more. We had far more car crashes. We had 2 head-on collisions on 287 that resulted in multiple fatalities. And then the suicide rate was up, I think, because people were locked in and, there was a lot more going on last year. We had people that couldn't get in to see their doctors, and we weren't necessarily autopsying them, but that led to other cases that we worked. So everybody across the board that I've talked to was at corners across the state and down into Colorado saw that significant increase. It's just been weird.
Jennifer, on toxicology, is there just one line item for 15,000?
Yes,
And that 25 on the back is just what you've tried to up from last year?
oh no, it's at 1250 now and I upped it to 15.
Okay. And then the body bags, I see there's one for 1,000 and then there's a item.
Yeah, if we did a yearly line item on it, as opposed to we could do a separate special budget, like with the tires every couple of years. I did both in case you guys wanted to look at both of them.
Okay, and how many more body bags in a case versus 2 rolls?
The rolls are what we use most consistently because they're cheaper. Those are the shrouds.
Okay,
The cases of body bags, it depends on where they're at nationally. Last year, they went up significantly in price. The tarp-like material ones, if I can get them on sale, they're about $25 a piece. But I've seen them as high as 60. So
ultimately, if you had your way with this one, which would you go with, the $1,000 for the body bags or the 1,500 for the body bags?
the yearly line item, the 1,000.
The 1,000. Okay, awesome.
They don't
Sure.
really seem to have bulk pricing,
Okay,
cheaper for more additional. They just call me and they're like, hey, we have this great sale. And I'm like, dude, tell me more.
Good.
So,
Bieber, any questions?
No, I just, the challenge with the coroner's budget is it's not very big, but it's also not predictable, right? So, I mean, I don't know how tight this budget is gonna be.
yeah.
If you went bare bones, we could always,
This is bare bones.
right? But we could always amend, right?
Yeah.
And we may have to anyway,
Yeah,
if some crazy thing happened with a vehicle or, you
yeah.
know, I think that's just built in, that maybe you have to come back to the commissioners if something
Yeah.
blows up.
Well, and like I did when I was really worried because if the rate of autopsies we were doing through November and December, if that had continued, my
Right.
budget would be gone. I was just telling them, I think it's going to squeak in maybe a little bit over. It depends on when the billing comes in over this next month for the ones that I have out right now. So,
It's pretty hard. You could have a really, really busy month and then have crickets the next one, or have busy ones all in a row,
Yeah.
strung together.
well, and I was just telling them that it's just been such an odd year. I mean, I've had 2 infants already this year and a 13-year-old. So these are not things that you plan for or can even really predict when they're coming. No rhyme or reason to it either.
Well, so I'm inclined to give you whatever you think you need to budget that way. And, if we put a bunch in the coffee can up there on the shelf, then if it's needed somewhere else, it's hard to go back and get it. But it's easy for you to come in here and say, guys, and the rest of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I'm sure you guys saw that my training was so far over, but I've come to the commissioners and told you about that because last year I had a new deputy that needed to go to the law enforcement academy, and then they shut down the law enforcement academy. So he ended up having to go to a special academy in October, which was twice the price in a year that I hadn't budgeted for it. And it had covered it, but Sally and I were both due for our continuing ed hours. So we had to go to training in Jackson, which is what destroyed my budget on the training line item this year. So if WLEA had been open and he had gone to training in June like he was supposed to, we would have been perfect in line with all the line items. But.
I guess that's what CARES Act money is for.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even think of that part.
We probably didn't either. Yeah, so to me, I don't, if we were to split hairs over $1,500 or $2,000 here or there. I don't really see the reason to spend the time, the exercise in this budget. It ultimately, because of the unpredictability of the coroner job,
Yeah.
maybe we just have to come back and amend. This wouldn't be the place that I'd wring us out in our time, you know.
I appreciate that. And I try and be responsible with all of it. So,
Well, and everybody,
oh, yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah.
everybody knows that this is the way it goes.
Jennifer, anything before? I don't want to waste any more of your time. If there's
Nope.
awesome.
Just want to make sure I answer all your questions.
I'm sure you're aware, there's a Wyoming statute that allows for reimbursement for indigent burial.
I am aware.
And so do you need that? I don't know. If we should leave the line item and then show revenues for that $3,000.
What do you,
can't add a, I think we only just have a minimal like copies or postage reimbursement for randomly 20, you know. And we can add that in there.
okay, whatever you guys think is best on that. Thank you for reminding me. I was going to
No,
ask you
that's
what we should do with that.
Sure. And also Jennifer lost a really great colleague from Carbon County, the Carbon County coroner, passed away last week.
Yeah, that's been really
Balls
hard.
and Laura, what a
Yeah.
good dude.
He was just, because his cancer had gotten so.
He had to retire because he got too sick.
He's just, he was wonderful.
Is there a flat rate for?
She budgeted $3,000.
By state statute, they can only charge us $1,500 a burial. And Montgomery Stryker is really good about working with us. And if they have extra caskets, they'll discount, you know, if there's a casket that they're needing to get rid of because it maybe got a crack that they can't sell, but we can use for an indigent, they'll donate it and then take the money out of what they're charging us. And so they're really great. And then I've been working with Jennifer Curran because we only have a set number of plots. And I learned that if you have cremains, you can put 4 cremains to a plot. And they hadn't been previously doing that with the indigent burials. And Jennifer Curran was able to confirm with the cemetery that we can start doing that now as well because of their regulations for plot size for cremains versus full size. So that should free up some of our plots.
Does the state reimburse on what you pay, or is there just a flat fee from the state? Does anybody know?
I think it's what you pay
Okay,
because other counties have it where it's bid out when they have multiple mortuaries for who gets the best price. So while the state statute says they can charge that amount, some people get better deals than others.
and is there other than maybe cost, and I guess let me show my ignorance here, why people are cremated?
If I can find somebody, you know, if they have documentation saying that they wanted to be cremated, if they have loved ones that refuse to take care of their remains, but have said that they wanted to be cremated and are willing to sign the cremation authorization forms, we'll go ahead and cremate them because it makes it easier on the funeral home and the timeline to get them buried up at the cemetery. And then it also takes up less space in our plots. So not a cost difference, more of a space and a
Right.
time issue.
And just all of the in and outs of all the ifs and thens of how decisions get made that aren't very predictable.
Yeah,
You don't know if you can get a hold of somebody. You
yeah,
don't know. I mean, it's just like 10 variables
yes.
that make that decision happen.
I used to drive Peggy crazy because she's like, you never call me with a normal question. And I'm like,
There's
well, I
not,
can figure out the
there-
normal questions.
there are no normal
It's the
questions.
strange ones that I need to ask questions about, so.
So Jennifer, there's a particular area of the cemetery that's just for indigent.
Yes. The county owns this. I believe we still have 26 plots. I don't really know the total amount that we have filled, you know, what we originally bought versus what we continue to own, but last I knew, we had about 26 plots left.
That would be interesting to know, wouldn't it? How many total the county owns and how many, what percentage or how many of them are have been used?
Yeah. I could find out too. Alicia.
Any questions? Any more? It's an interesting, something you never really think about, right?
Nope, nobody ever does. I can promise you that.
Is there a marker just for those plots where indigent people are buried or?
If we can't get, there's a whole statute dedicated to veterans, but if we can't get them accepted into the veteran cemeteries, then the vets will come out and put a marker on theirs, but otherwise, no, because there's a cost
Okay,
They're just logged in, they're documented
in the register for
in the
the,
register, but
yeah,
not necessarily a marker. You'd have to
Right.
take the little map and go find.
yeah, the marker lines
Yeah.
with the sexton, yeah. Which is unfortunate. but-
Indigent carries through all.
right, just it's
Forever.
going, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I was wondering if that's what you walked in with, about, oh my God.
She was gonna put us in.
Well, I think I
Want to know what's the difference for us?
Yeah.
I could try out the county plots as a customer.
No, you're-
Yeah, I was gonna say, you might need to.
I have to pick up.
They gotta wait.
Well, you're right.
Right. You could bring Yancey, he's a tough guy.
Oh, you could be happy. Oh, I should know. I should have brought my new electric stuff.
Oh, it's got a little battery and it helps you.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
you can lower it and not have to live so high and stuff like that.
Yes.
Well, workers' comp and damaged bodies, people's, damaged humanity costs way more than tools to
Yeah.
make things easier.
We've talked about that in prior meetings too, about, we might could find somebody else who's willing to do this.
When I was a kid, we had no time for using a tool. We just used our muscle, right? And then as you age, you realize that tools are cheaper
Yeah. Very much so.
than breaking yourself.
I did,
Right.
right. It's in the- that's to be- that's at least 15 minutes earlier than scheduled, because we were running at a schedule.
Well, because we have a space, what would happen if you stepped into the space?
Well, I
Or is your
could,
budget too low?
except Stacy from Public Health is in the empty space. And
Gotcha.
also Chelsea is going to come in hopes that she could be fitted to those spaces also.
Oh, good.
Ranch is gone,
Yep.
and so she's going to present on behalf of them. So I happy to start, if you want me to start. I can do either, whichever.
Well, that's a question for the chair.
I can do, actually, probably, Stacy, Lamb's request is much shorter than my request. So, we're going to be for this one.
Well, and you could,
What there.
because you have different sections like elections and things like that, you could maybe slide in the gaps and do it in sections.
Up to you.
Are you Stacy right now, Jackie?
I will be, well, I'll be, boy, Roy should be here, but, I will slip in my narrative for elections. Basically, I wanted you to become aware of the fact that I did move my 2 election staff into the county clerk's payroll. So when you look at the budget is very, very thin. And it should be thin outside of salaries and benefits because it's a non-election year. But in my election budget, I want you to be well aware that currently the Joint Corporations Committee is meeting. Actually, they met yesterday. They're meeting again today. There's been a lot of discussion about runoff elections. And it would require a constitutional change, which I don't believe will happen this year in order, or the beginning of next year in order to have a runoff election. But what they were proposing was a runoff election in May, the primary election in August, and the general election in November. And so at the time of preparing my budget, I did build in some expenditures for election judges, for ballot printing, for advertising in the event that that will happen. Now, after whatever happened yesterday at the Joint Corporations meeting, they're looking not at runoff elections, but rank choice voting. And so now, in fact, this morning I was tasked by one of my colleagues across the state that all the clerks are to respond to now a new questionnaire. And so should I not have any election this next fiscal year, then of course I won't expend those budgeted line items for ballots, for election judges travel and mileage, and for some advertising. And so, Sue, in non-election years, my budget really goes down. And, you know, in the past, we have been able to collect a lot of that expense from the city of Laramie, the hospital district, the school district, Laramie Rivers Conservation District, the fire district. Those are the outside entities that we built because their candidates appear more so on the general election ballot than on the primary. Only members of Laramie City Council appear on the primary ballot. And so the cost of elections will help us determine how much we can expend if I move my salary and benefit line item out of the clerk's budget out of the election budget into the clerk's budget. The one request that I've added for your consideration in elections is contract labor. I did want to report to you that I had a very constructive meeting with Karen Bowman regarding GIS and her role with redistricting. My concern is, of course, she's new to all of this. With the census not being released until the end of September, in a normal redistricting year, we would already be done with redistricting. We have not even gotten the data this year, nor will we get it as a state until the end of September. So between October and probably early January, maybe early February, we'll have to have redistricting done. And depending on what the legislature or the Joint Corporations Committee suggests to the legislature, if they go to ranked choice voting or if they change the election cycle, there is a lot of work to do in a short period of time. My concern is that not having the ability to have someone like Alan Frank, who has helped us the last two redistricting cycles in both 2000 and 2010, I'm hoping, and I've not spoken with Alan, I don't even know if he has an interest, but in the event that he might have an interest, if the need arises, that I can contract with him to help us assist with our boundary lines. Alan is most familiar than anybody else outside of my election team on all of our boundary lines. He's worked with the U.S. Census Bureau through this whole new, in preparation for the new redistricting. And I would like to have a $5,000 budget in the event that if Karen and my staff need assistance, that we can reach out to Alan if he's amenable to. If Alan is not amenable to, then Rich Greenwood has been hired by other county clerks around the state, and I would reach out to him to assist us. You know, redistricting only occurs every 10 years. It is quite extensive. It's very time consuming, and that is my new request that I'd like to present for your consideration.
And Jackie, either way, Karen would be a part of it as well, so that she's going to learn this, even though the next one will be for 10 years.
Right, right. And she's amenable to do so. Like I said, we had a great discussion. Of course, we're going to reach out. The gentleman from LSO has pretty much made himself available. Unfortunately, he was gone and he's back. He should be back now. He was taking vacation. We are going to reach out to him and ask him if he can come over to Albany County, or if we need to go over to Cheyenne so that we can look at the data that he already has on file for Albany County, to not only help Karen familiarize herself, but also see what data that we have. And we can start thinking, because it not only affects the lines for the House and Senate districts, but it also affects where are we going to create our polling places within those particular districts and precincts. It was our hope that for the 2022 election cycle, we would go to vote centers. And a vote center, basically, I'm going to use an example that we use the Laramie High School gym, because they were very gracious in the 2020 election cycle to allow us to use the whole gym, the large gym, that anybody could go anywhere that they are currently registered in Albany County and vote at the Laramie High School or the fairgrounds, if we use the fairgrounds as a voting center. Unfortunately, the WildReg system that the Secretary of State's office has, and the different software vendors that have the ability to help us with vote centers, it's being basically revamped. There are 3, I believe, counties in the state of Wyoming that are going to be used as test pilots again. They are Natrona County, Teton County, and Kayla, help me remember who the third one was. Natrona, Teton, and maybe Fremont County, thank you, will be the catalysts that'll use the new system in 2022. And so, unfortunately, our initial plan to go to vote centers this next election cycle won't become a reality, but it'll be something, I hope, a venture of the new county clerk to pursue in the future. Thank you.
Voting centers are awesome.
This eliminates the question, where do I go?
Well, there's that, and then you can vote. It helps with turnout, because I don't know, let's say your life blows up on election day. You haven't voted early. You could wind up not getting to the polls because of some extenuating circumstance in your life, and I'm sure it happens. So if a voting center is open for a while, and anyone from any precincts can go there, when you're in that part of town or in that part of the county or whatever, it's actually open. And I think
Are
that
they open longer than normal polling places?
is it only on election day?
Yes.
Gotcha. See, I thought that at some point they had toyed with the concept of, like the election building is a voting center,
Sure.
that's open for.
With early voting, currently, the election election building is open 40 days prior to any primary or general election. They're talking about making changes to that, to maybe shorten the period to 21 days, not to be open the Monday before the Tuesday election, which would really create an inconvenience. We have actually allowed over 900 people in one day, the day before the general election, to cast an absentee ballot in our facility. And so for those of us where, even though it's very hectic and very long and time consuming, we would rather have that day than to cut it off on the Friday before, because I think we would have a lot of electors that would be really unhappy.
That's interesting. I think that when everything's compressed to election day, it makes it that much harder. The more drawn out it is over time, the easier it is for you to run an election in straight time without, normal working hours, without killing people.
Right.
And if any issues come up, you have a chance to fix them, or troubleshoot or find the discrepancies or whatever. On election, you have a harder time.
What is difficult is on the Monday prior to the election, not only are we open for all of those electors who wish to cast their absentee ballot, but we're also setting up polls.
Yep.
And then we're running business as usual in the office. And we in Albany County, probably, I know we're the only county in the state of Wyoming that do this, but we print our poll lists the night prior to the general election. So all of the data is up to date. And so
So
that
if you've already voted, you're not in the poll book. because-
you're on the poll book
But it
because we
shows
have
that
to
you already
account, but
voted.
it shows that you've already voted. And so this relieves having the judges, having us send out the information to those judges at the polls to hand manually enter those individuals that have cast a ballot that may have, if the poll list had been printed earlier.
Hey, in redistricting, because some people are assigned a new precinct, do you guys mail out all new voter cards, or how does it work?
Yes, in redistricting, because you will have to basically by resolution approve the new boundaries within Albany County. At that time, then we send notification to all of the registered voters in Albany County as to their new district and precinct. The numbers may change. Hopefully, the legislature will not change those numbers, but we don't know that with redistricting, with all of the counties that have grown in the state of Wyoming, those numbers could really change, but we are required to give notification. So that will be an expense that we will incur. And not knowing exactly what it is, will occur with what the legislature wants to do. I think they have a vision, but unfortunately that vision does not work in redistricting years. And that's the information that we're trying to portray to the committee and to the legislators. Come see how it works before you think that implementing new legislation will make it better, because it's right now, it's going to hurt the state of Wyoming. And we don't certainly want to be in the limelight having bad
The
elections
law
in
of
Wyoming.
unintended consequences.
Right.
So, in the off year, your budget is basically to register voters and maintain the voter rolls.
Basically,
And some-
yes, and some supplies just in preparation for notification, or we send out notices for those individuals that are interested in being election judges and that kind of expense that will occur. But the majority of the election expense will come in next year's budget request.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm so sorry that we're creating solutions for problems that don't exist. It's really ridiculous as far as I'm concerned in a one-party state to have one party create problems and then create solutions for problems. And yeah, I'm so angry at this around the country. The system of government is based on people voting and having the system available to people voting. And to do this is just ridiculous to me. It angers me beyond belief. But I'll leave that to another day.
You know, something interesting when so like the populated areas, like maybe the top 8 cities in the state, 9, 10, probably don't have a lot of movement in the districts when there's redistricting. But if you're a rural community, you know, where like Jerry Paxton's district that goes from Albany all the way to Sweetwater, and it has a gazillion piles of sagebrush in it. You know, those rural communities get traded around to make the districts even, and so there will be people who are in a whole different situation. Like if you're tied to Guernsey and you wind up being tied to, you know, Lusk or Torrington or something, all of a sudden the district you're in and your representation totally changes. So it's going to be really interesting, and that's the challenge, I suppose, of being a low populated state. I would guess in states with more population,
I'd love to see them send a ballot to everybody who voted and make the election day a holiday. That would be wonderful. It's to increase turnout, because that's what we want to hear, is every citizen to weigh in on their government. Sure.
You know, if the committee goes through and the legislature does sponsor legislation to allow for runoff elections, basically, if you participate in that runoff election, you are the only, or if you participate in the primary, so the primary would come before the runoff. I said that incorrectly earlier. So if you participated in the primary and we had a runoff election, but in that window of time, we had voter registration drives or individuals that voted or that registered to vote. If you didn't vote in that primary election, you're not allowed to vote in the runoff election. And so to keep separate data,
that's a pain.
you know,
Interesting.
apart from, and how do you tell people when they didn't vote that are now interested in voting that they can't vote? So it opens up a lot of problems that I don't think the legislators are listening to. What really, this won't work now. And so
Maybe what they're trying to do is deal with the issue that the difference between plurality and majority, right? So somebody wins the plurality, somebody gets most votes, but if they only have 50%, then they'd be wrong, right? So if you can't hit the majority, then I suppose that's the Republican Party's way of trying to sort through candidates in a more productive way, because generally in lots of jurisdictions, the race is basically over at the end of the primary. And interestingly, probably the Democrats have the same issue in California, right? When there's that heavy of a majority, it could make, you know, if you have 7 people running for a seat, you can get, or 17, you can get Donald Trump when you'd rather have somebody else, right? So it's a way of having an extra sorting process in the process. But it doesn't affect Democrats that much, because there generally aren't very many jurisdictions where Democrats are lined up 4 or 5 feet, right? It's basically just party politics for the Republican Party to figure out how to sort candidates.
Yeah, we all pay taxes, and so Roy, you're up. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your patience, Roy. Thanks, Jackie, for that. Morning. Morning.
Okay, I just turned out some fans in here. it's 74 and it was throwing 78-degree air in here to try and cool it off. This thing that we had with the cooling worked good up until about this week. The other morning it was 60 degrees at 5 o'clock in the morning. That fluid cooler cannot cool this building down, and there's a lot of people that are getting hot. And a lot of them mad at me for some reason. I don't know why. I didn't create it.
So
Hopefully,
you're just fix it faster. dang it.
hopefully, it was supposed to ship out on the 6th, the chiller. And it's only gonna take 2-3 days to get it in there. But it's coming out of Mexico, and who knows, maybe I don't know about shipping anymore. It's kind of hard to get parts. So we'll see. Hopefully it helps.
Ray, do you have somebody ready to go when
Oh, yeah,
it
they're
does
ready to
show
go.
up?
Yep,
Okay.
they're lined up and ready to go, and they know how important it is.
Thank you.
There's not a whole lot we can do. It's especially hot up on the 4th floor. Judge Sanford's having a hard time in his courtroom. Really doesn't want to do any jury trials because he just feels terrible of having these people come in on basically their time. They don't get paid that much for jury duty. And then they'll be subjected to hot temperatures in a spot. So it's really been hard for circuit court. District court's a whole different animal because it's a whole different heating and cooling system, that room only though. So district court's pretty good. If you guys ever want to take a break and get cooled off, go up there. It's a good place to cool off. Are we gonna pull up are you guys got my budget up or what? You do? Oh, you have it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have Zoom, we're not using the,
Oh, okay, that's fine. So how do you want to do this? Just go line by line and go down it or what?
Or just any changes,
Okay.
Roy, and then maybe an explanation of those changes.
Okay, let's go down about 4 rows down and there's, for my part-time help, I'm asking for the same thing, but I just want you guys to know that I've used that wisely. Last year, between the 2 different ones, using somebody in the summer for a little bit of help, and then my winter guy that helps with snow removal, it's only $28.36 is what we used, and so $2,836. But I have that $15,000 in there in case we need to. I kind of need some help right now, but I've been waiting a little bit. Everything else is pretty much the same until you get down to, we wanted to get the windows cleaned on this courthouse after the construction was over. A couple of years ago, he gave me a figure of $4,320 for interior and exterior windows. That's not going to be, that will change. He was out here the other day and saw the new front entry, and he was looking at things, and he doesn't have his repellers that he used to have. And even if he did have repellers, the way the front entry is built, it'd be hard to like go on top of that roof and then come off that. He thought he'd have to use a kind of a bucket truck. Would be nice if we'd got a ladder on the outside of that building for anytime we needed up on top of it, but that was eliminated because it wasn't cost effective or whatever, but it would have been nice to have a ladder going up to the top of that building or that part of the building. I think it's going to be a lot more than that, but we'll just have to wait and see and get that. I have that down as 4320, but I know that's going to be higher when it finally comes out. Everything's the same basically on my building and my supplies, maintenance supplies, and I've done okay on those as far as spending, and that includes supplies for other buildings as well. Just so you know, that includes anybody needs a case of toilet paper or towels or something. They've just ordered them through me, including public health and other buildings. Everything else is the same there. On the second page, there's a couple of things going on. We lowered our our elevator contract is quite a bit substantially less and will be better service all the way around because the newer people have a tech right here in town. HVAC contract, that's going out for bid. I know long bid will be around 34.5. So I think you should probably kind of up that up if you could to at least 3,500. They haven't raised anything on us in like 4 or 5 years. They had a lot of repairs last year that was kind of in there that they took care of.
Because they was under contract.
Well, that wasn't even a lot of things they did just out of the, things are wearing out. But if we have a valve or something that goes wrong, they've taken care of that. I have some, maybe 1 or 2 spare ones left, but that's going to go up, and the bid will go out for RFPs. I think going out, and we'll probably have to do like a 1 or 2 month extension on their contract, and they'd keep it at the current one, but they'll probably be one of the only. There'll probably only be 2 bids come in for that, and that's probably going to be long. And the other one is Johnson Controls, and and I don't know where these came on the second one, Jackie. On the second page, like it shows window cleaning at $280. Do you know where those numbers came from, or do I have the wrong one?
Isn't that how we did the increases? Like all these highlighted ones here are to keep it static, and then this is what it would increase by.
Basically, Lori, you said 4320 was not enough, but if you add another 200.
Oh, okay, that's in addition to, okay.
So, yeah, in addition to.
And I think the janitorial contract, I looked at the contract and for the courthouse, and so far we've only had 1 person bid. And so it didn't increase any activity by going out a little bit longer. And their bid is 60,000, which is what we have in there. So that 10 grand that we have on there, we probably don't need it in there because they're going to be they're keeping it at 60. What their bid is that.
So Jackie, you can make notes of these things.
What is
We have to hone our pencil, maybe we go back to.
the janitorial? Oh, that was a 10. Sorry. Equipment repairs. That would be good to have that additional. Backflow tests, same thing. Everything goes up a little bit. And there's I've asked for a raise again. That's in there. I haven't had one in a few years, so and my job has just gotten bigger and bigger. On the very bottom of there, you have excuse me, fire, some new costs that we have. Fire panel monitoring. Used to be our panel was wired directly to dispatch. That no longer is acceptable by the fire department. We have to have a third party monitor it, and when it goes off, it goes to them. Then they get a hold of dispatch. So I like the old way, but the fire department doesn't want any more of those old things going on. They want it, and this is the way it is on most places. You have a third party that monitors.
Is that because they respond to an error code on a fire monitoring system?
I don't really know.
All their lives, they just keep running out to go see buttons flashing on somebody's.
It could be, but I don't know how many people were actually wired directly into them other than us in the city.
School district, maybe.
Yeah, school districts might have been, but I don't think we ever had any false things going off or anything in our building. We have, it's easy to call those guys on the 911 non-emergency and let them know what we're doing, and they've always been really good about, not dispatching when we ask them to. So there's been a couple times they've come over that we've had to have that. And then the annual fire system inspection, those we didn't used to have those. And probably we should have been having them. And those are hard costs that we can't get around. Those have to be in there. And those will probably, as we go along in years, it's probably going to go up more. That's kind of what I got. Do you guys have questions for me on anything?
So then that total at the end there going to end up being 37, 864, and maybe the 10,000.
Yeah, that will be, so that'll probably be 37 around that number, because we don't need that. I thought we would. I thought they'd be higher, especially with the new front entry, but they might have thought there was some pressure to somebody else coming in. And so they wanted it and bid it, and that's what they came up with. And so I don't know how to generate more interest for those type of bids. I really don't know. I think the times of people looking in the paper and getting all their information from there is no longer happening. And I really thought it'd be a great job for a couple kids. Like we had one year, we had these two guys that were at the university, and heck, you figure 30 grand a piece, a couple guys that are healthy and young, and they could come in after school and they could knock it out. And then they did a good job too. I kind of liked them, but I don't know if we have any incentive for young people to start a business, even if you're young in college, because, they do it and, they could do it in like about 3.5 hours a night. And they, per person, and both of them tackle it, and they were pretty young guys. They did something that I really thought was a lot smarter. I bought a backpack vacuum, and they're the only guys that ever did this. It's sitting in the thing, and the other people don't want to put it on. It's not that heavy. It eliminates, dragging a vacuum around. Vacuums are awful. They tip over and do all this stupid stuff. And it has like a 70-foot cord. You could go, especially for stairs. I mean, you can just go up and down them. And those guys really liked using it, and it's still in there. But nobody wants to use it.
Then you have 2 free hands.
I know. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, anybody that's ever vacuumed stairs knows how, and at least these are rubberized, but if you vacuum carpet stairs, there's no way that you'd rather do it with a backpack on your back. Just move anywhere you want. It's so much better.
Well, you might not know this. You're talking about starting business. Years ago, when I was an undergraduate, my then husband and I got the contract to rappel over the top and painted all the windows in the schoolhouse.
Oh, really?
When there used to be turquoise, we painted in the dark brown.
Huh.
But that was before the centuries.
Right.
So it wasn't easy. And actually, I ended up doing most of it.
What did you tie off to? What did you tie off to? Do you remember?
What's that?
What did you tie off to? Do you remember?
Something up on top. I don't remember.
Because when the guy came up, he owns a business, and we walked up there, and he had just had double knee replacement, so he couldn't walk up into that part of the building. So his wife went up and was recording it for him to what do you call it? FaceTime. So and they're going, what do these guys used to tie off to? There's two, there's an elevator shaft that's big and rocked in like this, and then there's another shaft that's similar. And I said, I really never watched where they tied off to, because most people were just amazed they were hanging off the building. And I always thought they should have wore Spider-Man costumes, because the kids would have loved it. But they said, I don't know where we could tie off.
Slung around the whole shaft. I don't remember.
Yeah, because I think that's.
I do remember the detention center used to be upstairs, and so I have remember one particular
You still got your stuff? You still got your rooms? I might need you.
Your way fast.
You still have your
Yeah,
rooms.
I was ready to be off the 4th floor, down to the 3rd.
Whoever painted the dang trim turquoise, what a crime.
I don't know.
Those are the 70s, you know?
Hey, Sue, I think it might be 47 because the HVAC contract is, I wrote down that Roy thought it might come in at 35, the budget 35 instead of 25 on the back.
Oh, okay.
Well, I wanted to ask, so on the front sheet, there's the total expenditures, 181,205. And then to me, the second sheet is sort of the variation, right?
Yeah.
So we'd be adding like 35 to the 181 if we funded all the requests the way they're presented. Am I right about that?
Well, I think if I heard Roy right, we would be losing 10,000 on a janitorial contract, but then we'd be adding 10,000 for the HVAC contract. So it'd be a wash. So it'd be
Yeah,
at 47,
So it's
860.
additional, yeah, about 35, you're right. Then it'd be a lot.
And Commissioner, in the past, we paid the HVAC contract and the window cleaning, or we budgeted those in 1%. And so just as a reference, if that's where, if you suggest that we move that, then certainly that even reduces that.
And you said HVAC in which one?
Window cleaning, we have 9 items and 1% for it. I'm surprised though that I did not see anything for, and we also already have the elevator contract built into 1%.
So the point is that maybe right now it's sort of got a placeholder in both places.
Right.
Which means that as we go, we have to, our brains count it twice when we shouldn't.
Other than not counting it at all.
That is true.
That's when you run into trouble.
That is true.
Any other questions for Roy? Eber, anything? Thanks, Roy. I appreciate
Okay,
it.
anything I can bring you guys to cool you down on this? You guys good?
Oh,
No,
I guess the question I have, so to me, if I'm sort of using my blue collar logistics brain, the soonest we would have be up and running is like 10 days.
I think probably that's about good. I was thinking like June 15th at the earliest, but closer to the end of June. And I just hope it gets here and they get it in. They're ready to go when they get it,
But 10 days from right now is
yeah,
that's the
probably-
earliest
that's
that it
probably
would be up
realistic.
and running.
I think so.
So like 10 to 20 days basically is where we're at.
I don't know if there's any other cooling options we can do. I mean, I was hoping that, it'd be sooner and we'd have it in, but
Can we pump outside air into this building all night long, just like opening the windows? Is
that's
that
what they've
we're
been doing.
Okay.
That's what they've been doing with the fluid cooler. And then, but once it reaches this point, there's no cold air and that sort of start pumping hot air
Sure.
or whatever. It's today, just now, it was 74 and it was pumping out about 80 degrees. Air coming out of there. And I even used my thing to kind of see whether or not it was on and it's right.
So we need to run it all night and then basically shut it off
Yeah,
for as long as we can during the day.
it's kind of still and everybody goes, I don't know. Because the still air just seems like it's hotter than maybe getting a fan in here. Without bringing some huge fans into the building. And then if you have offices to go through, it's really hard to get it
Right?
circulating through everything. So
Be cool if you could,
hook up something to the whole duct system.
well, just bypass the mechanical stuff out there and just draw air in the return and push it back out the vents so that the whole building is the same temperature.
Right.
So the cool air goes where warm air.
It's more individual than
Do you know what
everybody.
I mean?
It's more individual than you think though, because there's air handlers here and this duct system is just for this air handler right here. And so it's all over the building with different air handlers. And in a house, you could just do that, hook up to your main thing
Just
comes
turn
in.
the squirrel cage on.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, and here it's just too many individual ones. But doing our best.
You just have to start hauling blocks of ice and putting them into the rooms.
I thought about that. Just put it in front of that van out there. Okay,
Thanks, Roy.
Thanks, Roy.
That would be novel, wouldn't it?
We actually did that in our office. We took a bucket and put the ice in and a little water to get it going and blew it because Brianna is the one that's pregnant and she's right in front of the fan. We're trying to keep her cool.
Uh-huh.
So they want some nap.
How'd it work?
It actually, I think it helped us. Kind of did, don't you? I mean, it's better than nothing.
Right. And Jackie, did you say Chelsea's up now or
Stacy was supposed to be here, but since Chelsea's here, I say, let's go.
Chelsea? Thank you.
Here.
How are you?
Oh,
Stacy?
Stacy's on. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Stacy's on. Zoom.
Look at us paying attention.
Good morning, Stacy. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Well, let's continue your budget. Give us a minute, please. And do we have that budget?
Yeah, 41 is for the park. And it should be in the worksheet that I
Yeah.
gave you. This would be
Towards the very back. That's what I thought.
yes, it's very last one.
Okay.
And grants will be after, will be the last one after Stacy presents.
Oh,
That is so funny. There's lots of choices. Just gotta sort your way down. There we go.
okay. I'll look for it later.
That's it.
Thank you. Well, Stacy, good morning and welcome to Albany County. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Let's see if I can make you bigger. You're kind of the size of a postage stamp on our.
Sorry, I'm in the conference room.
No, it's-
Hi, I'm Melanie's here as well. Melanie Pierce, Regional Supervisor for Public Health Nursing, and I'll actually be presenting today since Stacy's so new.
Okay, Melanie, we got you. Take it away, please.
Thank you. So I think it's been 2 years ago since I had to do this. So just wanted to see if there's anything that's changed. Do you just want me to go through each line item and explain the request? like before?
Actually, we just rather you go through the line items that have changed meaningfully from last year to this year. Kind of give us a little explanation, and if we have any other questions, we'll ask you if that's all right.
Sure. So really, I did the exact same budget as last year. I just decided to do that because not really knowing how things went last year and just reviewing kind of what's been spent so far, I decided to just go with what Ryan had developed for the last fiscal year. There really were not any items other than like building maintenance that we went over for this year. And I think we had like an HVAC issue or something that caused that to increase, but we're able to cover it with some of our other line items. I did not change. Let me see if I go down. I took out the continuing education because we have that from the county. I took out books and subscriptions because we didn't use that. And if we need any kind of books, we can take that from clinical supplies, because more than likely that's what the book is going to be about, is like a clinical, something that the nurses would need to do their job. Everything else has stayed the same as
Okay.
last year's request.
Well, you're making it easy on us. Commissioner Ibarra, Commissioner Richardson, any questions? Melanie?
The only question that I would have that maybe Melanie can answer, maybe not, is, COVID and the response changed the operation in there quite a bit. And I don't know how that got dealt with, if it got backfilled by CARES Act money or, I just don't know how the traffic was directed at that, and if there's any leftover help or leftover costs that won't get reimbursed. And I'm going to guess that about everything that can be attributed to COVID gets reimbursed. So I just don't know how that all merges, and how it would affect this budget.
Right. So how COVID affected public health office last year was basically with revenue. So a lot of our services that we typically saw in the clinic decreased drastically because of our response to COVID. All efforts were being put towards that. And then we stopped seeing people in the office because, to protect the staff. So the revenue for immunizations, specifically travel, I think we did okay with our private vaccine because of flu. So we did really well with that revenue, but the childhood vaccines and the travel vaccines decreased pretty significantly in my eyes. I think that is going to start increasing this year as we have Stacy now. We actually have another new nurse, and the COVID response is decreasing so that they can start doing more of the services that we've done in the past. So that revenue will go back up. As far as the COVID funding, there is a lot of money available to Albany County, and so I don't see having to ask that you guys, the county, to have to pay any of that COVID response. If it continues after December, when that funding ends, my guess is that they're going to have more funding available. And so I don't see COVID affecting this budget other than our revenue, like I said. We have additional funding left from the nurse salary, and that is because we were without a nurse manager for a couple months, and then we were without another nurse for almost a year. So we did not use all of that funding, but now that we're fully staffed, we will use that again. Did that answer your question?
It did.
Maybe.
What
Okay.
it told me is that revenue will go up and expenses won't.
Yes.
Of course, on a budget, you don't budget revenues, it's only expenditures. So,
Right.
the increase in revenue gets incorporated somewhere else. And of course, that goes into the general fund, not back into the budget. So
Right.
to me, it's all good.
Yeah.
Sue?
Yeah, Melody, I didn't hear you speak to the two new items you have on the bottom of the first page. The winter maintenance and the CHO certifications.
Okay, so
Melanie.
that's not on my page.
Yep, you're not aware of that because in discussing with Amanda, we are currently paying for certifications for Dr. Elias that is not in the public health budget. And so we created that line item. So that I don't know where currently those certifications were being paid from in the past. But since it's a direct expense with public health, we built that into the budget. Thank you, Commissioner Ibera, for bringing that to our attention. And the other line item,
Winter
sorry.
maintenance. Winter maintenance.
Oh, winter maintenance, because you have somebody come in and do snow removal for the building. We have been paying that also, and it is a
That's
really
what we
direct
paid
expense for public health. And so we built those two line items into the budget.
Okay.
Also, for continuing education, we do have continuing education budgeted in 1%. We've always paid for it there. And so I know that you had indicated that you didn't have a need for continuing education, but I know there was $800 in the past, and I carried that $800. Unless you don't want me to budget anything, it is in 1%.
No, that's what I meant, is that it is in that 200 line item. So I didn't ask for more from our 100.
Alrighty.
Yeah,
Thank
yes,
you.
I would like to keep that 800. I just didn't ask for more.
Okay.
And can I just ask, what certifications are we paying for? Because I don't believe that's been covered.
Amanda is getting those two invoices that we paid for, and she can answer that question better than I, Melanie. Just one moment, please.
Yeah.
The Board of Medicine renewal each year is $240. And then, we did the DEA controlled substance certification.
It shows green on the other side.
It's the Board of Medicine renewal and the controlled substance certification. But the substance one is good through 2024, but the other one is yearly.
Okay,
200.
that's, yeah, I don't think we've ever paid for her in the past, so that must be a new request from her directly.
This will be the second time. We started it
Okay,
we had COVID funds for it this last year. And then
okay.
I guess it's just a thing now. But
So is it the point that we want to allocate specific expenditures to specific budgets? Because if the commissioners directly pay for too many things, then it's too hard to see the real cost of that operation, right? Like building maintenance, if we did that centrally for all the buildings, you wouldn't be able to easily tease out what public health's HVAC costs. So by separating it out, it makes a problem more noticeable, and also the real cost in that area and that department is more able to be seen.
Hey Melanie, in other places, since you work as a nurse manager somewhere else, is that certification just part of the county health officer's tool of goods? They just pick it up themselves, or how is that normally taken care of in other counties?
It's not. That's why I was surprised and wanted to know more about that. My guess is maybe it's because she's retired. But in other counties, the county health officer pays for their own licensing. That is not paid for by counties.
That's this is the first time we've done it, this is last year.
Yeah. Well, I'm not interested in really setting precedent along that way. If it's part of how it's done in other counties, we should be standardized in that, in my mind. both the DEA and the Board of Medicine licensing. I know that's needed to be the county health officer, but
Well, we are paying her.
we are paying her, yeah.
And that's like a personal thing.
Yes, that's to be qualified to be the county health officer, you have to have those things. I'm not sure about the DEA license, but I know you have to have the certification from the Board of Medicine.
Yeah, she has to have the DEA because we order vaccines
Okay,
and other things under her license.
okay,
But the county doesn't pay for nursing license, and we're
Right.
required to have our license.
exactly right. Yeah,
That's a personal thing. So DEA, that's like controlled substances. That's like prescription kind of stuff, I'm guessing.
Correct.
but she has to have that to order the vaccines.
Yeah.
So, but once again, that's something that qualifies you to be the public health officer. One quick question, it's maybe not budget related, Melanie. I'll keep hitting this drum, and I have been for a while. At 40% vaccination right now in Albany County, with the students coming back at the end of August and the first football game being shortly thereafter, is there money available to have a much larger response as a county to vaccinate people? I look at what Teton County's done. They have a lot more money than we do, but is there COVID money that can be available so we can move that number up past 50, 60, 70%? And is there, in your expertise, setting a goal as a county / city / health organizations? Does that make sense? And then how do we go about doing that? I'm really concerned that we're just saying, oh, we'll take care of it, but we've got 3 months to take care of it and we should have a strategy.
Right. I think that it's a reasonable request and a reasonable goal to reach toward. And I think that it's going to take more than public health, the public health nursing office, to accomplish that. Your first question was, is there money? Yes, there's money. I think that there's quite a bit of money. I think it was over 400,000 that was given to the county for vaccine efforts. So the money's there. It's just figuring out how to utilize it to put events together and find the right resources. I think that the university and the hospital have been great resources, and I think it's just coming together, continuing to have those meetings and figure out how to increase the rate. It's not a vaccine issue. I don't think it's a cost issue. I think it's just coming up with a plan and figuring that out. A lot of counties are starting to use incentives, and I have mixed feelings about incentivizing vaccines, but a lot of people are starting to move towards that direction. Come get a vaccine and you get a gift card, or come get a vaccine and you get free meal somewhere. So I think Stacy has a big job ahead of her as far as trying to figure out with the group how to get that percentage up. And she's big on goals and working towards that. And Stacy, you could speak to that a little bit too.
I was able to sit down with Victoria, and after I spoke with Pete, we had talked about what we needed to do to get the vaccination rates up before we have 30,000 people in a football stadium. And she agreed, taking into account demographics and what the summer looks like and how we've kind of seen the increase slow down. It was gone up a percentage point over each week over the past 2 weeks, I think. We do feel like it was probably a realistic goal to get us up to 50% by the end of the summer. We don't know how feasible it would be to go beyond that. But I did sit down with Victoria, and she's committed to working towards that. And she's currently training our new vaccine coordinator. They're going over all the processes specific to our health department with me. So you'll have another person available to train and to vaccinate. What do you think, Pete?
Well, I appreciate it. I know you're coming into a really tough spot. And I understand the complexity of it all. I just think there needs to be a coordinated effort, like you guys are talking about. And I don't believe public health should be the only person leading the charge. In fact, I think this commission, I think the city council, I think Ivinson Memorial Hospital and all those health entities should get engaged, because, right, who ends up dealing with that is going to be Ivinson. If they're a Medicare person who gets COVID, Medicare pays for a hospital stay, whether it's 3 days or 30 days. My understanding, it's the same pay. So if a person's there 30 days, the hospital is going to lose a lot of money on that person. And money is a factor, but it's not the entire factor, right? The health of our community is really the most important piece. We know we have these big inputs coming in. We know we have school coming with 10,000 kids, mostly from places in Wyoming, and mostly of those places are not vaccinated at more than 25%. We know we have 30,000 people coming in September. We know that most of those people will be coming from Wyoming. We know most of those people will not be vaccinated at more than 25 or 30%. I just see a big problem, and how do we address it as a community is really important for me. We only have 12 weeks. And although I'm really sympathetic, we just kind of got to get going. Because it's not easy. And I know we work with this at the clinic, trying to convince people. Now we've gotten all the easy ones convinced, right? They already came in and said, give us the vaccine. We're now 4 or 5, 6 discussions with people to get them vaccinated. But we need to have a strategy. And I know you know that, Stacy. It was nice having the conversation. I just kind of want to interject some sense of urgency, because I'm concerned, really. I really am.
It may help to know also that our case rate dropped substantially last week to 17. I think it was, 50 in the 50s before, like 59. So we're seeing a significant drop, and I know that's going to drastically change when college students come back. But I'll definitely make it a priority. And I think the incentive idea is a fantastic idea. I can sit down with Bill and Victoria and see what money is available, and we'll start working towards that.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate it. We'll be talking. I'll be talking with you. Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? No. Melanie, thank you so much. Stacy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we'll have you come in person, Stacy, so we can all meet you like I've had the pleasure of doing, and introduce you to Albany County and the good folks that work here.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Chairman, would you like to see those 2 additional line items that we
Yes, I would. I don't believe that we should do anything differently in a county that 22 other counties don't do. Yeah.
So there's a vouchers file for the DEA one. Do you want me to go ahead and pay that, or do you want me to pull?
Let's pull that. Yeah, and I will try to remind myself to send a note to Dr. Elias. All right, Kurt.
Oh, were we not going to do Chelsea?
Or we do Chelsea.
Oh, we can do whichever. I don't know.
Rock, paper, scissors.
How about Chelsea? Thank you. And then,
I will be short.
okay.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Well, and you?
Good. So here for tall people. So it sounds like you just want to go through the line items where there has been changes.
That's it.
Okay. So first line item that increased would be the chief deputy salary. Grant used that raised reserve to give that position a raise. The next increase that you're seeing, which I believe is already approved, would be the deputy clerk's salaries. And that would be increased from our new employee that we're currently hiring for, and also Karen's new position. So that $40,000 difference covers those two costs. Longevity is going up $275. Haley Wacker, our senior field position, is meeting her 5-year mark in August. And then, you know, your FICA and Medicare is pretty self-explanatory with us getting a new employee. Really, the only increase that we're asking strictly from like our personnel or non-personnel budget would be for travel and mileage. We're asking for $300 more. Since we are getting a new employee, that person will have to take some classes so that they can get certified. That $6,400 covers 8 employees going to 19 classes. So I feel like we use that money very well. We do have to be certified to do our jobs. Those classes are required.
Where do you go to do that?
It's all over the state. I
it's
try
in
to
the
go to
state,
Lander.
Because you like going
I
there.
like Lander. But they're usually in Casper or Cheyenne. Yep, they're about week-long classes. Test on Friday morning.
Do they do that webinar at all? Chelsea, it's kind of surprising that it's in person.
Yeah, actually, the reason we're having to take so many classes is because they canceled all the classes last year. So we all have to go to a week-long class to maintain our certification.
So last year's travel and mileage and training budget didn't get used because it was COVID.
We did manage to spend some of it. We took advantage of that and put Karen through a lot of classes for mapping. ArcGIS is looking to move forward to ArcPro in the next 3 or 4 years. And so we spent a lot of that money trying to get her up to speed on how to do those migrations.
Yep.
So.
And those must have been virtual.
They were, yeah. Yeah. So that covers it there on that first page. On the second page, you will see TY Pickett. So that's going from 14,000 to 14,500. TY Pickett is the company that does the valuations for our big industrial accounts. So Mountain Cement and Peatling. And they have increased the cost $500. But on the flip side, Apex, which is our sketching software, we used to pay for 2 extra licenses, which was $600. The state has absorbed that fee, so we no longer need that $600. So that's really a wash. The other line item is Greenwood, which is the company that does our online ownership map. They were $5,200, and it says it went up to $6,600, but I thought it was $5,600. I'm not 100% sure. I put a call out to him this morning, but I haven't heard back. So I just left it at the 6.6 just in case that was true, but I'm thinking it's 5.6.
So that'll get sorted out later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the salary increase on that, could you just tell me that again, please, Chelsea?
For our deputies and clerks.
Yeah, is that 3808 on the backside?
Oh, I don't know what that's for. Oh, okay.
Okay.
And from an HR perspective, that probably fits into job classification, step and grade, formula, all of that stuff. That would be an interesting thing to look at.
Yeah.
Any other questions, commissioners?
No.
Awesome. How's the space working out with Karen and GIS in your offices? Chelsea, is it?
Good.
Or
So we actually haven't moved Mo back yet because we are waiting to hire for her position. That's kind of been a struggle. Typically, we have several applicants and we've received 4. And we've had it posted for 3 weeks, I believe, but we're interviewing this week. Yesterday, we had a great candidate, so I'm hopeful. we are doing some rearranging. We had some desks in storage, and so we were able to pull some of that in so that once we do get that position filled, Mo can move right back. But I feel like Karen, that transition has gone smoothly. She's met with most of the department heads. There's still a couple that she needs to meet with, but I feel like that's going well.
Awesome. Anything else, commissioners? Lucy or Jackie, anything? Thank you, Chelsea. I appreciate it. Thanks for being so
Thank you.
patient.
You guys have a good day.
You too. Now, Kurt, got you. Thank you. Kurt, good morning.
Good morning.
Tell us all about the budget.
Yes, sir. And I have been trying to get myself up to speed, and I may not have all the answers right now, but I will do the best I can. The primary increase for the budget is for the intern positions. Historically, it appears that we asked for 40, and then we would have to come back every year and ask for more money. So we were advised to actually ask for what we were spending up front. These intern positions are very important to the office. They do a lot of work for us. And so you know how the process works. We get 150 hours basically free from them to begin with as externs. And then if we like their performance, we hire them on as legal interns. And then we often hire from that pool. I think by the end of the summer, early fall, we're going to have 4 former interns will be attorneys in our office. And it allows some interchange with ourselves and the law school. So it is an important program. So right now we have 5 legal interns. Actually, only 1 is paid right now. The other 4 are on the externship. We have 3 discovery interns, which are basically college kids. They're doing discovery, though. I think I'm going to use the open legal position to start taking over discovery. That's the sending out of evidence because we're having some issues. But that's where we stand right now. That is by far the biggest increase. And I believe that's simply to adjust things to how they are. Just to ask for it up front, just get it approved and to see if it will be approved or rejected up front instead of having to come back and possibly let these people go mid-semester and put ourselves in a bad situation. We had an increase in bar dues and in Westlaw, which is the research program we have. That is due to 2 more attorneys coming on, and simply it's an increase in expense. They have to have the research capabilities. Though I do think it's early on to say, but Westlaw, we could definitely use the ones we have, and I think get by. If somebody needs research, they can go to another attorney or vice versa. And the interns have access anyway, so it's a use they have.
Oh, so you have to license individual users.
You
Do they have an account? So like if an intern's logging in, are they logging in under an attorney's account or?
They actually have their own accounts as law students. They have Westlaw access, though they are supposed to be limited on how they use that. We don't try to use that because Westlaw does that as a kind of a gift to a law student.
Sure.
You get unlimited. We only have access to Wyoming case law and 10th Circuit case law because to get everything, it costs for 5-6 attorneys. You're looking at tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
So we limit it to our jurisdictions to keep the money down to a reasonable amount.
It's brand recognition. They don't want them to do LexisNexis. when
That
they
is
become
exactly what it is. And you get LexisNexis. They don't use them because we buy books from them, but no one really uses them. You get coffee mugs when you're in law school. You get all kinds of stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's kind of a racket. You build up points.
It's like marketing fake products to high school kids.
Basically, yes. CLEs, we try to get free sale CLEs as much as possible. We've also utilized in the past grants through for sexual assault training through Crime Victim Witness to have them pay for it. And we always try to do local if we can, unless we're working off a grant. There is an increase there, but again, that would be due to the new attorneys coming on board. And again, we will try to be careful to use our local resources first. Trial expenses, there is an increase there. On the 1%, there was $4,000 being used for judicial dialogue. We are no longer using that money because we are not using that program. The city has got a different case management software system, and they allow us to use that for free. It allows us to link with the LPD and to LARC and the criminal histories. So it allows them to access our cases at least partially. So we don't need judicial dialogue anymore. And we basically move the money for judicial dialogue into trial expenses because that's an area where we're always coming up short. A big change as far as trial expenses goes. There was a change at IMH where they now are belong to a different medical group and they are charging when we call doctors to the stand, which was not the case prior, which gets very expensive very quickly. And we're using that sparingly. We understand the expense, but it's going to raise our trial expenses. The adult diversion program, which we're asking for the same amount, but it is, Ms. Trent attempted to have the statute, the laws in Wyoming changed to allow for fees for people going through adult diversion. And what adult diversion is I believe it's 18 to 25-year-olds and they get a MIP or possession of marijuana or a lower level misdemeanor. It allows them to go through a program that's monitored by the Cathedral Home. And basically they're on full probation. And if they complete the program and do the treatment and do okay, they basically avoid having a criminal history. They don't have to use a more structured statutory deferral. It allows them to not go through all the pain of that and not get a criminal history. We have not gotten the legislation through. I understand it has some support. I just don't think it's a primary issue with the legislature right now. But in most states, Colorado, I'm aware, pretrial diversion, the individual pays because it is, it's kind of a gift in a way because you're getting the opportunity not to have this conviction on your record. But for right now, we don't have that there. Cathedral Home is monitoring the young people that are going through the program. It's going well. We seem to be going through the money. I think we used like $43,000 up through May of the money that was allocated last year. I know it's a good program, and hopefully in the near future, the goal is to have it pay for itself and not be a burden on the county. I don't believe that's appropriate, but we are requesting it because it is helping our young people. It's a good program, but we are working to get that alleviated from the county's budget.
Kurt, is that the TAIA or what's the acronym for that one? Is it TOIA or?
I believe it is. Yes, ma'am. And I don't know the actual, I can't give you the whole label of an acronym. I just know, I know it is adult diversion. I know local attorneys have been using it a lot. And working with the university and the young people over there, it was a great option to have, particularly with, when you talk about marijuana, they have the concern about losing their financial student aid, particularly the FICA, and it allows them to get around that.
Right, that's a federal thing, right?
That is a federal mandate. If you're convicted of possession of controlled substance, you can lose your ability to get financial aid, student loans, Pell grants for up to 2 years. And even a misdemeanor possession of marijuana will trigger that.
And these kids don't know that until they're told that.
They don't know that until they get in trouble. Generally, they're advised in court for the first time and then they're terrified. And it's a wake-up call at that point.
Yeah, this is good. It's more expensive to prosecute someone than it is to send them through diversion. And actually, if they paid the user fees, then it would be really less expensive. It would be, you get to pay your own way through the lesson rather than the taxpayers.
And that's how it should. We just need to get our laws at the state level caught up to other states that allow us to do that. I know there was
statewide, we have this issue that Laramie, Albany counties where the 4-year institution is. And so but there are a lot of places that don't have the issue, so they're not particularly understanding or sympathetic to it.
I believe you're correct. We are unique in the state with this issue. But for us, it's very important. But my hope is it will gain some support. Maybe our local legislatures will try to refocus on it, and hopefully, maybe the next budget cycle, we can start saying there'll be fees paying for this, and the burden won't be on the county. And that's how it should be. Juvenile diversion, that is supervised by the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. We are asking for the same appropriation, but I also want to let you know that we're also applying for grants. I think we're waiting for our award at the end of the month that would cover at least a portion of this, along with housing of juveniles and the electronic monitoring. This system is also, it allows juveniles basically to avoid either the adult system or the juvenile system and actually put them in court and still give them supervision, and is of a great assistance. And it surely saves a lot of resources, both from the state and the court, because a juvenile, once you start a juvenile case, it can go on for years. And juvenile diversion has been a very good program, and it is very important to our more progressive system here in dealing with juveniles and keeping them out of the system and keeping them out of incarceration. The crime victim witness grant is another one that pays for basically the entire victim witness office, at least the salaries. They also give us $700 a month for the rent for the American Legion. I'm trying to, it comes out of the 1% tax. We didn't see it on the last budget request. And I honestly have not tracked down where that money exactly comes from. But it is, I'm going to follow up with that. I know the lease apparently was brought before the commissioners and approved, but I'm not at this point sure where the remainder of the money comes from, but I'm trying to figure that out. It has been coming out of the 1%. I don't know if that was tied to our office or not. I just can't locate it. And that is not in this request at this time, because I've been unable to figure out exactly where the money is coming from to pay the balance of the rent. The FAM care program is not an increase, but it is necessary for us maintaining our juvenile grants. It is a little expensive, but without it, we could not have the statistics we need to keep the grants that are supporting our juvenile system. The only other thing that I was having issue finding, and I don't have an answer for yet, is there was on the last budget request, there was a gatekeeper budgeted for $24,000. In speaking with Bailey at the end of the day yesterday, I believe we had a grant last year, but it may be lapsing. I'm trying to figure out exactly when that's going to happen, and when we may need to at least make a request for more money. The gatekeeper program works with Title 25 and mentally ill people to try to give them wraparound services, help them with their medications, so we avoid having the repeats with the Title 25s. I am simply unaware right now exactly where that money is and where we are with our grant. And I don't know that we've applied for another one, but I will be figuring that out shortly. Oh, perfect. Okay, very good.
Amanda did.
Miss Amanda knows everything. She's been a great help through all of this.
Services is also that.
Okay, should I have put that in this budget request or?
It's already.
Oh, very good. Okay. That answers my questions. Any questions for me?
Kurt, could you explain to me fringe, or could somebody tell me about fringe? Yeah, I know I ask it probably every year.
And I want to be honest, I cannot. I do not know what that was. It was in the last one. So I think when they were kind of rushing to get things done, they just put it in this one, but I really don't know.
Amanda, do you have any idea?
For this salary, the rate is the taxes, workers' comp, retirement.
Okay.
So I believe there's some salary requests.
So you separate the direct salary line item from the ancillary costs, and it's an interesting thing to call it fringe, because that's not very descriptive.
Fringe is hanging off of the
Yes.
actual-
Totally gotcha.
We all just looked at it with blank stares. I could not figure out to save my life.
Amanda, so there's 2 entries for that. So do you combine that?
Let me just pull it up so I make sure.
Like one
Oh,
third,
yeah.
30, 40.
Oh, yeah, so the attorney increase and then the fringe that's associated with it. And then the intern increase and then the tax associated with that.
Okay,
And I see most people's budgets have that broken out as Medicare, maybe we could standardize that and either go with, everybody goes with fringe or everybody goes with the same.
I think I just combined it 'cause,
Yeah,
all of the, and 30 of other stuff in there.
Yeah.
But it should be separated inside, and it will be separated.
yeah. Thank you, Amanda.
Sure.
Anybody else?
Can you do, have you gotten your sea legs under you yet?
I think so, starting to get there. You know, the best thing is the office. I mean, as far as the criminal and juvenile matters go, I mean, they're running like tops. It's basically getting in the administrative end, which I never was really a part of. That's been the biggest learning curve so far.
So as far as services, that stuff's all running and it keeps cranking and it's dialed in. You guys just have to go through the learning curve of understanding where everything's at and what the caseload is and what. Yeah. Well, that's not too terrible.
It's not been too terrible at all. That's
All things considered.
Any other questions? Sure.
The one item that I briefly addressed with Kurt is the IMH contract for involuntary commitments. The contract that's currently in place expires at the end of the month. We have overexpended that line item dramatically this fiscal year due to billings from prior years. And so it's hard to determine what to budget in that particular line item because of the expense this fiscal year. And I know that Kurt and I will have the ability probably to talk about it more, but I did want to bring that to your attention that that is probably the one line item in itself in any line item that overexpended itself huge this fiscal year that necessitated a budget transfer. So I don't know if $250,000 is sufficient. In the past, it's always been $175,000 because of the contract. And so that's kind of an unknown, and it's in intergovernmental.
And I did meet with some representatives from the hospital, and they are supposed to start billing us monthly now. So we don't have those backlogs. And I'm gonna need to talk to Ms. Gonzalez more about that. About who's reviewing the bills and those sorts of things. I know things changed and we need to address the process.
Yeah, so do you have the feeling as we stand right now that we're all paid up for back years and that we're in the current year at the current, or are we gonna have surprise billing that might
I'm
surprise?
worried that we're going to have surprise.
Yeah.
I really am. I just think that, they're how they got so far behind, and I think, we have to have a better working relationship and having them provide the data for submission to the county attorney's office and a much more, I'm hopeful it'll be a monthly basis, but we were paying things from 2019 and 2020.
Yeah,
Well, that's challenging when the agreement is a cap, an annual cap, right? So there's no way to see truly how close we got to the cap. Do I remember it's 100, well, it was 175 at one time. Maybe it has incremental increases. Is it still there?
Yeah, it was budgeted at 175.
So then we don't know. I mean, then do we retroactively, because we pay them the 175? So then if we get a bunch of bills that total more than that, are they wanting to basically balance bill us in the current year for stuff that happened in previous years where we didn't hit the max? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
But those are questions we can't, at least I can't answer, and I don't know. if Kurt was
I
able to
cannot
answer,
answer at this time. No.
Because Peggy submitted those bills before her departure. And there was a slew of bills that were submitted that took us overextended that line item and overextended basically the whole entire budget. And so I don't know what we can do in terms of, I mean, I know that Kurt will work and get a contract, but I think that somebody has to hold the hospital accountable for submitting them in the timely manner this year.
And that could be handled through contract negotiations, because that is correct. We pay them the cap, and I don't know if we have a process to keep tabs on whether or not that cap is being exceeded when we have bills coming in for 1 to 2 years old. And where they get assigned to when the bills came in and when the services were performed. My assumption is when the individual is in the hospital is the year it should be included, not the billing year.
Sure.
But, I mean, I simply don't know. I mean, the way it was explained to me is they try to but collect from the individual's insurance first. So there is a natural kind of lag time, but I can't imagine that would go on 2 years before they had exhausted their.
So there's a delayed reconciliation,
There is.
essentially,
There is kind of built into the entire thing.
but not 2 years. That's a long.
That's a long time. You'd generally be in collections by then if you're not.
Well, and you would think that the hospital would, we all want to know how that relationship is working, and that contract and how much actually gets spent and so on. And if there's not a proper sort of reconciliation of that, then no one can really see where we're at. When it comes time to negotiate the next one, if we still have a bunch of stuff hanging out there, or we wouldn't know if we are satisfied, and they wouldn't know if they are satisfied with the
Correct.
arrangement.
No one would know if this was a fair allocation or if one side was disproportionately, gaining an advantage. There'd be no way to determine financially.
Mhm.
This year we budgeted $175,000 and we paid out year to date $281,840. And so we're $106,000 plus overexpended in that line item. And
Well, isn't it capped? Don't we stop paying at 175? Or are that extra 106, did that come in from previous years?
Well, I know in the previous years, I don't think we extended the full $175,000, but
So it wouldn't be appropriate for us to pay, if the expense occurred in 19 or 20 and we're paying over the 175 in 21 when we didn't ever hit the cap before.
I don't know how.
You know what I'm saying?
I know, so it's hard.
It's like
because we
double
don't
paying
have
for
any-
the same service.
We don't have anybody to go back to ask, why did this occur the way it occurred? But I'm concerned that there might be some additional building out there that you may be in receipt of that needs to be paid in this fiscal year. And what do we say no? I mean,
Isn't there a per individual as well in the contract?
I don't have that contract in front of me. David, do you know? Is there a cap for individual in the contract?
This is a total amount. I can pull up this.
Yeah, I have it on.
And I bet there's no billing deadline imposed in there.
Well, and then dealing in this world a bit, hospital billing is so interesting. That there are different rates charged to different people at different times and using different sources of billing. So there's a facility charge. And it's different if you have good insurance, it's my understanding, and different if you have Medicare or Medicaid. And then there's different charges based on, and additional charges added because some people won't pay and they have to recover that loss. And so there's the charge that you get that is much different than the actual cost to the hospital. And so it would be nice to have some conversation about if we get above 175, we get what it costs the hospital, because the hospital should be making money off the county for involuntary charges. County residents bill at the high insurance rate. So, yeah.
It is a good point.
Yeah.
It's a numbers game where they, you know, so like with an insurance company, they have a negotiated rate that might be lower than somebody who would walk in and pay cash who's uninsured. And so when they do charity care, they get to inflate the numbers because they get to bill and then not collect at the highest rate.
Right.
I used to be a victim of that because when I didn't, Obamacare made it so I couldn't afford health insurance, but I couldn't qualify for any subsidies. So I paid cash for the births of all my kids, and I paid it at the highest rate rather than even say the negotiated rate that an insurance company would have if I'd had it. And I paid on the spot, so they didn't have to go through all the machinations of collecting it, right?
Right.
So I saved them money on the administrative end. But because they suppose that somebody who doesn't have insurance will pay, then they charge me at the highest rate so that they can, in their accrual accounting, they can have a big punch in the gut that's not really a big punch in the gut.
Right. Yeah, so this is an interesting thing, and you and I should talk. I happen, just by being on the downtown clinic, I happen to sit on the hospital board. And so trying to ferret out. And so then I also work with clients from the clinic who accrue big bills at the hospital that cannot pay. And so maybe I might have a contact person for you, or a way to have this conversation, Kurt. Because I think this conversation is long overdue.
I would agree.
Yeah.
There is a cap, I believe it was,
$13.55 per day. Total. They can't charge, it says, I'm gonna increase the right services to. Title 25, the cost exceed $13.55 per patient, per day, per patient. Per day. That's the price. Or exceed the full liability cap established there. Paragraph 4. That $13.55.
there is, I think generally it's 72 hours, but it can go up to 5 days if it's a holiday or a weekend or something. of that nature.
Okay.
Of course, the ones that are half.
Yeah. And I'm not alleging that the hospital's doing that. They might be
Yeah.
getting us the best rate possible.
Yeah.
It would be nice to know and be all on the same page about how this works, because I don't see this going down for us, quite honestly.
No, I don't, I only escalating, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Title 25 is the big challenge for all commissions. And the reason is, it's like having a blank signed check in your checkbook.
Yeah.
And for budgetary purposes, that's not doable. The only protection that we've had that was supposed to work is the $175,000 contract. And do you know that until today, I never knew that it wasn't working. Nobody ever said anything like that to us, so that we would know that stuff was spilling over from year to year, and it was hard to keep track of.
Okay, on that uplifting conversation. Any other questions for
Don't
Kurt?
you feel good now?
Yeah.
Attorneys always make you happy.
No. There's a lot worse than attorneys in hospital billing in my world.
I
I have to get myself excited, right? Go hold the puppy and then go in, right? Or something, right? 'Cause it ain't fun. Anything?
Would you buy a set of tires without knowing what they cost?
Yeah.
Or knowing that that same set of tires could be sold to 4 different customers and they all pay a different rate?
Yes, and that's what happens. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, sir.
And I know you come back with us, right? And it was really tough for you to jump in there, and thank you guys for helping Kurt figure this out. But yeah, it's a lot early on, and so
Thank you very much.
you bet. You bet. All righty.
Do you know that my kids were 7 years old before we were done paying for their births? Every single one of them, 5 kids.
The whole
But the
system.
hospital got paid on the spot.
Yeah,
I went and financed it somewhere else.
had to do that as a 23-year-old. I had to finance a knee surgery.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you don't have a whole lot of assets at 23. So,
Well, I make more money now, but they were all born when we were young.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just glad.
Is
to
that the
have them.
reason you stopped at 5?
I don't know. We should have named the last one. Amen.
All right, Rob, thank you.
Thank you guys. I think we got too old. I think there's a point where you don't parent the same in your 40s as you do in your 20s. I need to take a nap. I think, you
That's why they call us grandparents.
know. And I'm not very good at discipline. Like, okay, whatever.
We get that choice.
Rob, what we've been doing is just going through if you weren't here for the discussion, just the differences on your line. You don't have to go line by line.
Okay. Basically, we held it flat except for on contract services, and that is basically for a hotspot. And we talked to Adam about that cost and stuff. So that is basically why we have a $750 increase on contract services line item. Is for 2 hotspots. So we can use our laptops out, especially with the Zoom process now so much, and also allow us to, be out in the field and pull up some of our equipment information and roadmap information.
Awesome. Any questions for Rob? Okay.
I do have a couple of things because I know you guys do the fuel, but I want to make you aware of what's this last year. Fortunately, because of we didn't have a real bad winter. The differences in 19 and 20, we used 48,564 gallons of diesel fuel, where this last year we only used 37,492. So that shows how significant the winter can be on our cost of fuel. Also, another thing with the fuel is it's basically increased approximately $1.05 or so. Gas has gone up from 189 to 242, and diesel was 150, and the last load was 210. So those are some things we're going to have to watch on that line item. The cost of fuel's going up.
And that's without fuel tax, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Government
Right.
doesn't have to pay fuel tax.
That's the county's cost. So just something to be aware of, that fuels could be different than they were
Rob, I'm
last year.
guessing that before the fuel started going up, that you got us all filled up.
We got as filled as we could get in the tanks without. You have to leave some room for expansion in the summer. So, but it'd have been nicer if we had bigger tanks, I guess, at that time. It depends upon when you're filling up.
Rob, just for your information, I have left that appropriation the same as this fiscal year,
Okay.
but if it has to be increased, I mean, we
Okay.
certainly, I will put a start by that to think about that, there's $199,000 budgeted, and to date, $139,000 has been expended.
Right, and I did get a split load here, so you're looking probably another 22,000 coming out of that. If it goes to that, then I think we're all gonna be. Yeah, we won't have to worry about finding roads because nobody can go anywhere, right?
Did wear and tear on the, like the dirt roads that we have to scrape all the bumps out of and gather the material from the edges, did that change any because of COVID? Did traffic go down?
I think traffic went down during the COVID year, but this last, 4 months, people are out traveling and we're actually seeing more on the people out on the county roads now than before. A lot of, right now, a lot of campers stuff. So it's interesting how, the ebb and flows of things. So we'll see, but we're doing our best to keep them smooth, but sometimes we can only be one place 7 times, I guess, since we got 7 blades, but it's always not the right place for someone.
They're all trying to escape the madness.
Right.
Sometimes I think you suffer from your own good deeds, right? You get stuff going, and then people come to expect that the roads are gonna be, smooth by May, right?
Yeah, and that's, and there's a couple of places we tried because of the holidays, make sure we get them bladed before that and things like that. And, this year. So to be honest with you, the Mullen fire put us behind on some of our getting culverts and things like that done last fall. So we're kind of chasing our tails on that right now. We were able to hire another guy that I think is going to work out really well. So.
Did we provide any road and bridge services that could be billed to the Mullen fire, or were you guys doing all that?
That's well, I sent all our paperwork to Chad. He has all of that, so I don't know exactly where that. Basically, I showed him all of our hours and the equipment, and he was going to apply it where it could be used, and where because he knows that a lot better than I do as far as.
Well, it's always driven. Sometimes it drives people nuts because they do the budget process on the expenditure side, but they
not see the
you don't
revenue.
get to see the revenue.
Right,
so you're dealing with expenses and productivity and the revenue.
And there should be some revenue there. Maybe Tracy and Jackie.
It had, any of the Mullen fire reimbursements have not made it to this.
Okay. Yeah, but I know Chad has that stuff. So
yeah, and he works closely with Lindsay on where the money goes for those, fire departments or us.
One thing too, we've been fortunate with the Boswell Springs Fund to kind of use that to pull some of our inventory, like cutting edges. I know fuel and labor is kind of, we were able to take some out of there. So those are some of the things that we pulled from there. So they're not really included in the general fund. For example, we've probably spent close to 25,000 on cutting edges, tires, and some miscellaneous parts that have come from the Boswell Fund that would have had to come from our heavy equipment fund had we not had that. So right now, because we have that, we're able to subsidize. I hate to use the word subsidize, but that's what we're doing a little bit, subsidizing our heavy equipment account that way. And the reason why we can do that is because when we made that expenditure, we used the cost of what it cost per mile of road, and all those are in basically a factor in what it costs per mile of road. So we try and use a lot of our Rock River areas expenses on Boswell Springs.
Those impact funds have a sunset on it, right?
Right. Eventually, I think there's 300. Okay, I have it right here. Just 300 and roughly 385,000 left in that right now.
You have to expend those by a certain date, Rob.
Tracy.
No.
No.
No, so we can.
Okay.
No, I mean, ideally, they would have been spent at the time of the project was happening because it's to mitigate those
Right.
unmitigated impacts. We all know Boswell was put on hold, so it's not
Yeah.
really even going anywhere, but we're still able to use those funds for the same purposes that we originally asked them to work.
And it also allowed us a chance to kind of catch up with some of that equipment so we can better serve that, well, all areas too. But, we're set fairly decent with our equipment stuff now too. For hopefully 10, 15 years out.
Does anybody know why they haven't fired up that Boswell Springs project?
My understanding was that they didn't have an agreement with Pacific Power, Rocky Mountain Power, whatever, to sell their wind energy. They had to have that in place for the permitting or something.
Gotcha.
But whether that's right, I don't know. That's just what I have heard.
That's the difference between a utility-owned project and an independent project. The utility is going to run its own turbines first. And also, utilities can pass all reasonable costs on to their consumers in terms of rates. And an independent producer of wind power that sells to the utility can't do that. So it's in the ultimate price that the utility pays for it. And they might be willing to pay less for somebody else's power than their own because that's on costs reasonable or unreasonable to their consumers.
On the revenue part of it, real quick, I'll probably be back in front of you guys in September talking. We have, I think there's like 4 salvage trucks and some salvage equipment and things, metal that we can get rid of. They're not going to be worth an awful lot, but it is something we need to get basically out of our yard and off the books and things. So currently there's 3 of those trucks aren't even licensed or on the insurance. So we just need to,
Like that old gym truck.
Yeah, no, the gym truck is, that's one of those that it'd be just, I don't know how to, it's not a real salvage type junk. It's not a junk vehicle, I guess. It runs. The other trucks we have, there's some, issues in the transmission or water in the.
They're worth their weight,
Right.
basically, in steel.
Yeah.
And the gym truck might have some market
value. You're right, just because of what it is.
Right.
Any other questions? Thanks, Rob.
Okay,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Adam, good morning. If you're ready to go, we'll get you up and hopefully out early.
Sounds good.
Adam, what we've been doing is just not going line by line on the budget, but any changes and you have an explanation, that would be great. And if we have any questions at the end, we'll ask them to you.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Sounds good. Do you want to bring up in the IT folder there on the public? There's also the IT not expenditures, but essentially the life cycle set. If you guys have any questions, we may want to reference that.
Okay. Is it an Excel spreadsheet?
You want me to pull it up here?
We don't have Excel on this computer, so we can't pull that out.
Oh, we need to fix that.
Yeah, Adam, workstation, just hang on. So here. I like the authenticator thing. That's cool. Very cool. Right, turn this. All right. I'm over here on the edge. There, we're ahead of the game. I suspect this will be helpful as we go to the last day, trying to figure out what is.
We have a
You'll be able to see that. We'll be able to see.
Yeah, that big old spreadsheet that has the 1% direct savings.
Will it add up automatically?
Believe so.
Mr. Chairman, I have a kid medical thing that I have to go to.
Okay,
And at some point, my wife is gonna say, I am here.
okay.
And so, and I can't get out of it. Yeah, but what I will do is I'll come find you, Jackie.
Give you my cheat sheet,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. And then, but I'll hang as long as I can.
Talk on that road.
I was expecting a copy to be up, so that's okay. I think I can go over the changes or the differences primarily based on that. So let's see here. So one change, notable change, that is the generator account is zeroed out. That's transitioning over to EMA. So nothing asked for there, and I believe the account will only be referenced for the second go or for next year's reprisal. I believe everything going down the first page is the same. Going off in memory here. Pull this from. So we are in our renewal year for our Microsoft licensing. As a part of that sure up, and just due to change in time, I'm expecting it to be a little bit higher on the yearly. It will still do a multi-year agreement, but most of which is paid out on a yearly basis. And that's just to pull everything in line in terms of what our organization license as a Microsoft whole. So the volume licensing there with Microsoft. So you see that jump of $5,000. The requested amount for backup software being the same. And I did want to note just quickly on that. I'm hoping that we are putting those in reserves. I know last time we spoke, Sue, this will be kind of new word. We were talking about trying to, and that's why I'm trying to bring up the life cycle diagram, is that you'll understand when those come due. A lot of those are 3 to 4 year life cycles on the products or the appliances. And so we want to make sure, instead of having to ask for the large lump sum come that year set, instead essentially reserve off the little pieces as we go so that the funds are available for renewal or different product selection, so on and so forth. And that's why last year we went with it. That's why it dropped so much extensively there last year, and it's staying in that same range. It's because that's the cost of at a minimum, the renewal of the same product set based on where we're at going across in this case, the 4 year term cycle of that product. change on network security. There's gonna be a large emphasis. I don't know how many of you guys reading the news, but I can't seem to open a single newspaper or any web article without reading about ransomware and or cybersecurity. This large jump is in compensation for the drop off from the computer replacement. Essentially, a lot of machines have already been upgraded and or replaced. We have a couple other small divisions and or offices that are still term for life, but with less being there, we don't have to cycle in so much. So I'd like to see us shift directions into the network security side and pull in either new subscriptions or new appliances to continually robust our security infrastructure. Let's see.
Or
Here.
evil.
Well, we have to. I mean, it's small money. I mean, anything we put towards it, security is small money compared to a response of any form in terms of an attack on us. And I mean, you got 3 of us that'll pull night and day to try to make it happen. So I'm actually demoing several products right now. So we'll be seeing some of that. So I'm thinking these funds will match with other grant funds, either through Homeland and or the Secretary of State for larger product sets that'll give us more robust security. Either in identity management, network monitoring and response, things along those lines is what we're looking at. VMware dropped. So that's based on our renewal and our renewal support. We're not utilizing near as much. As I said, we rolled down the VDI and the Horizon infrastructure. So this takes us down to essentially the minimum of our VMware core and the CPUs that are managed with it. Let's see here. Small bump in infrastructure to coincide with the security set. The iSCSI storage is replaced with nothing because that renewal is no longer there. That the product that was actually covering the Nimble support for the old Nimble, the old Nimble doesn't need to be under support anymore. We'll use it for a DR recovery device if need be. But you guys allowed us to purchase a new storage array, and in doing so, it's all under support and paid for. So no need there. And then the IT blade is the same sort of thing. The blades weren't renewed. It was cheaper to go with new hosts. The new hosts are in, they're completely under support. So let's see here. Questions?
I feel like you're getting this, I guess, the whole picture. You feel like you're getting it in hand and you're able to be, deal with some of the deficiencies and behind this and become more proactive as opposed to reactive.
Yeah, I actually compared to last year when you asked me the same question,
Yeah,
right?
because I did.
You did. You ask me every year, Adam, how are you feeling, where we're at? It does feel better, right? A lot of it is more the work that we performed. A lot of systems have been upgraded and other odds and ends centralized into single infrastructure, single viewpoint, so on and so forth. The big thing is the spent tax. I mean, if we didn't have that trying to come in, that would have been a huge deficit and would have left us with one less leg entirely. And we still have some money to spend out there, and we're working on that. Got several things in the work in there. We're building good partnerships. We're building good resources. We're always looking for more, purchasing resources, so on and so forth. Both at the state and the national level. I don't know if I'll ever sleep easy, just in the nature of the job and what it is, but it's getting better.
Just because it's so fluid.
Just because we have our hands into it, our nails into it, and understand it and can manage it. We have the insights. We've been, if it be syslog servers or different single pane sets, anything to help consolidate the information that's going on across the whole so that we can then better organize it, better efficient, make it more efficient and make it more secure.
Adam, is there ever a point that will be well ahead of malware?
No.
How do we
No.
just
There's no such thing. But in my opinion, I mean, that's the case. I mean, you have major exploits coming from, major vendors. You look at the Exchange vulnerabilities that took everyone by surprise earlier this year. people are still cleaning up the solar winds. It's just how they're becoming more advanced. A standard AV doesn't do it anymore. You know, a standard firewall, you have to have some form of analytics looking across the entire network. It's not just threat indicators anymore. It's behavioral. It's you know, it's looking for the behaviors and the patterns that are associated. And that's what we have to move towards. And getting there helps entirely, but then they shift the other direction and you're still playing the ability to get there. I mean, the only way to get ahead is to essentially not ever use a computer, but that puts me out of a job. So it's not emphasized. You know, and the truth is you continue to want to offer services and you wanted the connectivity and the visibility. It all comes hand in hand. You put yourself out there more, and doing so you see more. So
I would guess that we are a mundane, not very juicy target. That's our advantage. Is that if I was making malware trying to ransom somebody, that wouldn't be Albany County target. We're hiding in the herd. We're the run sheep hiding in the herd.
I can't say that. I think we're just as visible as everyone else.
Right.
You know, and the truth comes down, a lot of it is, you know, trying to educate end user individuals, what is spoofing, what is, what looks like a malicious link, your emails and those, how, trying to cover the broad spectrum and how things enter, but we're just as visible as everyone else. I know being small seems as though it helps us in some way, but at the end of the day, we've got government knocked onto our name. At that point, you're a prime juicy target. They're going to assume you have an infrastructure. They're going to assume you have the insurance plans, all those sort of things. And we do business with a lot of folk. So in doing so, we reach a lot of folk. So
how did we do as far as employees getting on board with all those stuff you said, just as far as training?
I think we did fairly well. We had like an 85% completion rate.
Nice.
Which for an org is great. Our numbers on the last fish test were below industry standard. So as far, in my opinion, we're working in a awesome direction and the staff have been receptive. A lot of people report stuff. I think that also coincides with the openness of the IT department and us being forward facing and being present in those degrees and people being willing to actually share, hey, I saw this, and not just ignore it and move forward. So, yeah.
I have a couple of questions. One of them is network architecture.
Yes.
That's a few years ago, it was pretty convoluted.
Still is.
Is it still?
We're working to correct that. So I'm terminating new fiber links over in Lark right now. It's a 24-strand pair that has literally been sitting there probably prior to Medville being here. It's there. It just wasn't terminated, so it can't be used. And it's going to retire a multi-mode, slower connection set, which it opens up those connectivity possibilities, right? We have several hops that are, when I say hops, going from switch to switch to switch, that don't need per se to be there. It could be more of a hub and spoke design set centering out of the courthouse, right? And no, I'm working on that day in and day out. That's part of the current push in my office right now. We've been finding connections, things that have been ran that no one has used or transitioned over to. We found, half done work in this direction and that direction. And so that's part of our cleanup. And some of the late nights that we spend here is, okay, that's the right direction. Let's keep finalizing.
So the layman term analogy is, in a house, when you wire it, there's circuits. And in the third world, you have one outlet and you just run everything in series from one end to the other, with extension cords. That is what our network architecture used to be like. And it's better when there's a circuit breaker box and circuits
are labeled
by design and they're labeled. That's the layman's terms of what I was asking. Is that a fair analogy?
No, entirely. Yep. We've done entire audits based around just figuring out the entire layout, where it's connected and where our interconnects are. Entirely. No, I think that's in truth. I think at one point it was a flat network, and several different individuals have attempted to continually reroute it and restack it based on their thoughts of best practice. And I'll definitely say the current switch replacement project will help a lot of that in terms
It's
of.
almost easier to replace these things than to retro engineer them and try to
Well, so Heber, you like to look at things from, the equipment side versus the time investment side, right?
Right.
And so I take, it takes some of my staff, half a day to build out the network, get all the hops set up, get all the static routing set, and so on and so forth from switch to switch. And that's all without fat fingering something. That's all manual entry and such. I mean, a single pane management interface will give us what will take a half day there and turn it into a 10-minute job.
Right.
And then simplify the entire span set. You push go, it deploys out across the entire thing. Each are received and recognized, and you can then continue on with your work and best practice in those manners. So.
Well, I knew that the spec money would make it so that you could just quit with the chitty bang run around fixing little things and trying to make it work, and just make you be able to migrate data and take a big chunk of garbage out and just replace it with something sleek and straightforward. And I'm hoping that has happened.
That is entirely what we've been doing.
Can you tell us about door locks? That's my last question. The whole door lock controller, all that. Because man, was that rough on our people and our process.
As in where we're at currently with the project?
Yeah, where we're at and how it's being used, and if it's working and
Sure. Okay.
modern, functional.
So we're the majority of the remote sites are done. If I had to give it a percentage set, I'd say we're probably about 70% through the project, maybe 75. There's still several based on, I'm going to say bad spec, that change orders have had to be produced. Essentially getting on site, trying to go through the installation, going, no, this won't work. A big one is, recognizing those slim locks, the ones that you see on the frames. You can't just stick, full size there. They make the slim one, put on the right equipment, do it right the first time, put the change order through, get the other stuff returned, this stuff going forward. The new card type, I think, has been an adjustment for staff, especially running in the hybrid state. It's not as quick, and it does take a minute, but that's also based around the encryption that's there. We're not using just a standard open source prox card anymore. It's a proper encrypted communication card and encryption that is still used and not broken at this point. The prox was, what'll be nice is when this is all done, no one can walk up to you and say, well, I've got a $30 Amazon reader. I can walk up to your card and, hey, I've got all your information and now I can get it, as every other vendor has walked through here and told us. I can't do that. It's encrypted and it's still compliant.
It's man, then we'll be like Langley, like CIA and Langley.
Try and put the groundwork so that when the security center, that kind of the courthouse security center is set and ready, that I can roll the system over into that. So mapping, display maps that show each of the doors, the current states, kind of something like what if you walk through the detention center, the master control, something along those lines, visual, easy to use, not based off the naming, doesn't create an expert to utilize, is the big idea there. It was a lot of work to do the user management and the user imports, but we got it done. We rebadged the entire county. The only thing at this point that isn't using the new card type is the fuel pumps. Those are a current hangover, and any of the doors that haven't been converted. And so essentially we have some of the old cards still there, still active based on that system, still using prox. And I'm just creating a new little printout that says fuel card. Albany County fuel card, and we'll kind of assign those as needed until we can either convert the system or we run with that prox set or find a different business process, pin and identification or something. But does that help answer?
Totally.
Perfect.
I like it.
Okay. Good luck with the health issue there.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is pay for as much of this stuff out of 1% as we can.
thing, and
Yeah.
Adam raises a really good question, is that should we, like the building reserve fund that we have, should we consider a IT infrastructure fund, so that when we are hit with these big expensive line items in 2 to 3 years, the funds are already set aside for that.
It's like a depreciation account.
Entirely.
You know. It costs a certain amount of money every day to be in business, whether you realize it or not. So if you don't realize it and you don't make that part of your operating, then 3 years later, you get a huge bill for all of this stuff because you don't realize and budget for the real costs.
And that's what
every day.
the second item there, the IT line items, is essentially, it has the, I want to say the replacement schedule.
I have a name for it. Let's call it the IT depreciation recovery account.
There we go.
That sounds government-ish.
Thank you.
That would totally work.
At the end of the day, I just want to make sure the funds are available.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
I'm always a believer that it's easier to put away a little and pay out in 4 years than it is to try to produce, especially a lot of the stuff is on the same year. You'll see that in the timeline. Becomes a very expensive year. So I don't want to see that being a limiting factor.
That's a great idea, Jackie, and thanks, and Adam, for already setting it aside on your schedule there. That'll make it easy to make that a reality. Yeah, it's super smart.
What else can I answer?
So if somebody were to compromise the security here, and I know this is based on how compromised it would be, how long would it be a week before you're able to come back up? I'm sure you take a picture of the entire infrastructure. I'm not sure what your schedule is. Could you bring it back in a week's time? Do you think that the county could be up and running again, taking license plates, working in the clerk's office, all that stuff in about a week?
I want to say yes,
Okay.
but again, it is totally reliant based on how deep or how hard it is, and a lot that goes in is you're playing two sides there. It's forensics. So you have 3 sides to that, right? So you're trying to regain your infrastructure, you're trying to perform a forensics analysis, and you're also working with law enforcement, and a lot of the things have to be transitioned over and held in place for those investigations. Yeah, I would say a week easily, or not easily, but a week of no one sleeping and doing anything else in those times for sure. I really hope we don't have to approach that, but there's the possibilities, but that's why I'm trying to be proactive. And so when I'm asking for security-based devices and network analysis and things along those lines, please take it with a very heavy grain of thought that it all centers around, pretty much all of our services center around the IT and the ability to work. So.
And then I guess just to follow up to me is there some idea that you would work intranet mostly, and that you would just have a few nodes that went out to the internet, so that people could work in the clerk's office within the stuff that's here, but not have the internet capability on everybody, because the more you have, it seemed like it would be more you able to compromise your system.
Well, a lot of times, the internet connection, I don't know if it's a defining factor in terms of the accessibility there, right?
Okay.
You can control that, and if that's what we seem as need be, I get what you mean. You essentially rebuild a closed circuit to provide that back, and that's where you would start in terms of restoration. Really, you would do your analysis, your forensics, you attempt a restore based on historical timeline. The problem is a lot of these things, based on these indicators, this is a compromise that's from 3 months ago and that sort of stuff. And so it's not just a short timeline. It's not, hey, if I bump back 2 days, we'll be fine. You get lucky in those cases. But true compromised accounts and compromised systems will be months back, and we do everything in our power to retain that information. But yeah, I mean, that is one approach, closed circuit, right? But at the same time, if those local machines that you're trying to integrate and connect to each other are also compromised, you have to start with a clean slate there as well. So it all depends again on I'm going to say the veracity of the veracity, good word there. How bad, how bad it is. Yeah, the truth is though, a lot of the services don't function without the internet. So you have to keep that in mind, and how it, your email doesn't function without the internet. The only true real closed source set is maybe the phone system, and that still reaches out over a CenturyLink connection. It's the world of being connected.
And then I guess just the last one is, we have insurance in place should a hack occur. And is that something we should consider? We don't.
I don't believe we do. I think Warm would, it's a conversation to have in Warm. I know the city has a dedicated policy and a budget set for that, but I don't know if we do entirely. And there's two sides to that, right? There was a long time where cyber attacks were only targeting people that had those insurance policies because it's a guaranteed payout, essentially, because it was such a new spectrum. Now it doesn't seem to be as compromisable, but yeah, having a money base to replace hardware, get supplies in. I mean, to put into perspective, a rapid response team, just for the forensic side, is going to cost $25,000 for a 6-week team from any of the major analytical players, right? Any of those vendor sets. So you're going to need the money there to recover in some regards. I'm not even saying pay the ransomware. And that's by no means what I want to propagate into the industry. I don't want to see anyone paying it, but I understand the timeline that's approached with it. So.
Thanks, Adam.
Does that help? It's a super scary landscape. I mean, I don't sleep a lot, honestly, and I get up every morning. That seems to be where my Google feed is endlessly, and it helps because that's where I spend my time trying to protect us from those things. But
I know,
you'll be seeing
some those trainings. I'm like, oh, please don't let me be the one who compromises the whole system.
I think you'll be seeing some requests here shortly for more in that regards, and that's why you're seeing that increase in the security budget. And that's just to complement what I also think we'll get financially from other sides. That's not a whole source, pay for it on its own, that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's very scary.
Yeah, this is just a cost of doing business, and that's why I think this IT infrastructure account should have cybersecurity and that type of stuff just being a consistent piece, because I don't know, you don't want to be hacked.
Well, maybe you guys look at it, from, we consider this a critical product set or a critical application. And therefore it's redundant into that budget or something along those lines. It prioritize based on that recovery base. Even we can have all those discussions if you want.
Give a suggested.
I will get back to you on that.
Other questions, Sue?
No.
No, thanks, Adam.
Thanks,
I
Adam.
appreciate it.
Can I check?
Sure. I saw the office little thing on the task bar there. Yeah.
It's running slow.
Okay.
It'll get there.
Okay.
First thing.
Thanks. Thanks, Adam.
Well, you guys have a great day.
You too. Jackie, looks like you for the rest of the day.
For the rest of the day, oh my goodness. Gotta end your day on a happy note, okay?
Yeah.
At least I'll try.
Well, I gotta tell you, in the 2.5 years, we've come so far IT wise, but then also in a lot of other areas, we'd be feeling like we hacked all the time. And then if we did, we would have a response. And then we would know who to talk to, and they would have the ability to be helpful. I sleep a lot easier, I guess,
I was
than
gonna
Adam
say, that's
does.
gotta feel a little bit more comforting.
Yeah, it was kind of a little scary deal, knowing just enough when I rolled it here. And so, wow.
All righty, I am presenting on behalf of Stacy Lamb. She is in Cheyenne. They are training on their new case management system. And so she had one additional request for your consideration, and that is in the district court budget. It is the court-appointed attorney line item. Basically, what she is requesting on behalf of Judge Cricken is an additional $20,000. And this is to pay for court-appointed parent attorneys in juvenile cases and in Title 25 cases. They are seeing an increase even this fiscal year. We had to do a budget transfer for Stacy, and the judge believes that an additional appropriation of $20,000 will help them get through, hopefully, next fiscal year. If you have any further questions, they probably have to be directed to either Judge Cricken or Stacy to expand on the request. But basically, that is what she provided to me and Tracy on her behalf.
Jackie, where does the jury trials, cost of the jury trials, where does that live?
In the district court budget, also the jury trials, and then in the clerk of court budget.
Jury board. Jury fees. On that clerk of district court, the jury fees is the second one from the bottom. 30,000.
Am I missing something? I might be wrong. I missed one.
Oh, no,
That's the district court. There's a clerk of district court one?
yeah, there's,
Yeah.
it's probably in your book because I only printed the district court one because that's where the
Okay,
increase
there it is.
occurred.
Yep.
Okay.
Are you
Okay.
handling that one next or this?
Actually, that is the only increase that that Stacy had that she asked me to present.
Was
Okay,
the attorney?
what's the, right.
Okay, yeah, I guess it's the same as last year.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
Well, that was easy.
yeah.
Any questions? All right.
Thank you. Commissioners, in the county clerk budget, my one additional request is for an additional employee. In my new expenditure request narrative, I basically broke down that the requested amount is for $38,379. That is inconsistent with the salary amount that we start a new employee in. Basically, it's pretty much in Tracy's office, Grant's office, and my office, and the associated benefits. Initially, in my request, I cited the statutory requirements in assisting in reviewing, archiving, and maintaining the records of the Board of County Commissioners and the records of the county clerk. I don't think either one of you have had the opportunity to look at what's behind that door. And my initial focus, and I asked the ladies to bring down the keys so that we could open the door and show you. There have been records back to the 1800s for the Board of County Commissioners. And in the past, those records from previous administrations, what was pertinent, maybe what wasn't, were put in file drawers. Do you want to open the door just to give you a kind of a peek of the number of file cabinets that we have? There are a lot of records. And prior to the, all of these are Board of County Commissioners records. Prior to, I would say in 2000, we were going to look up that to date, and Kayla, maybe you did. We started basically archiving the records because, I mean, we would continue to build file cabinets full of records and we couldn't do that. So prior to 2017, I had an employee who started the process of archiving the records for me. As you know, in 2017, there was a reduction in staff due to the budget. And basically I went from 14 full-time employees and 2 part-time down to 12 employees. I have prepared basically a fact sheet just to go over some of the responsibilities in the clerk's office. So bear in mind that after 2017, we continue to scan and digitize the records, but all of these records, some of it is probably garbage and should be trashed, but some of it is historical. So my initial request was to hire an employee to assist me in finishing going through those records and digitizing them. But then I am seeing the struggles that my staff have in the office as to the amount of responsibilities and the workload that we have. I provided this fact sheet from 2015 to present for the responsibilities that my office has in the various areas, from accounting to land to the front counter for titles under UCC, elections, the Board of County Commissioners, marriage licenses, notary certificates. There have been just a vast majority of additional increase in work. And you can see by the data that I collected in those various different assignments or responsibilities of how the trend has changed. I am seeking your approval for consideration for another employee to help us with the statutory responsibilities that we have. There have been changes in legislation, and fortunately, one of the biggest changes that affects many of my colleagues, but that doesn't affect us because of the way we handle transactions in our office, is the filings of UCCs. When a financial institution, maybe you purchase a new vehicle and you finance the vehicle, the secured party will bring in the title documents so that the titles can be issued, and then the lien is concurrently filed on the face of the title. There was an incident in one of the other counties in the state of Wyoming where the vehicle was, the lien was not perfected in a timely manner. And when the financial institution went to basically to acquire their interest in the vehicle had already been sold. So they lost the proceeds of the sale as well as their lien never being perfected. I don't know if they went after the county, but it was in excess of $50,000. In Albany County, if a secured party or a financial institution brings in the paperwork, we immediately, if the paperwork is in order, will issue the title and file the lien concurrently so that we don't fall into that scenario where the county can actually become liable. So the change in legislation is not going to affect us. And I'm happy to say that because of the processes we have in place. We do everything that we can to file our documents the date that we are in receipt of them, that the turnover that we transmit the documents, whether it's a land document for recording, a UCC document for filing on a lien, that we turn them back over to the secured party in a timely manner so that we never put ourselves in a compromising situation. With this data that I prepared to you, you can see that over the years that things have just increased. And in looking at my initial request, I guess it's more than just trying to have someone assist as the record specialist and to assist us next year in the new election cycle, primarily because Kayla will become a candidate. And for transparency purposes, I think it would be a benefit to her as well as to the office that we relieve her from the duties that she's customary in doing the 45 days with absentee voting. She will assist us behind the scenes, but I don't ever want to have anybody allege that we are giving her any preferential treatment as a candidate if there are other candidates that file for county clerk. And so my request is to assist not only the office in the daily responsibilities that we have, but to also assist us in elections, not knowing what the future of elections will hold in the state of Wyoming in 2022, and to be able to archive these records. It is my goal, and I will achieve it one way or the other, to have these records preserved, to have them archived, as well as the records of the county clerk, which means the retention schedule for UCC filings, for terminations, for certificates of titles, for payables and payroll, for land documents, for all of those different responsibilities, so that whoever my successor is, that they will walk in and this will not be an area of concern that they will have to complete when they start their term. It's an aggressive request. I appreciate your consideration. I'm doing it not solely for the benefit of what I'd like to achieve as my goal, but for the benefit of the staff in my office. That's all I have.
Sue, any questions?
No, I'm overwhelmed by this fact sheet.
So Jackie, if you have a part-time, if somebody were to make the argument to me, why don't you just make that a full-time? What would you say? That's just not enough.
That's not enough. The part-time employee actually comes in and works, basically covers the lunch hour for us. The beauty of the way I've structured my office is my staff is cross-trained, but with 3 of us right now out of the office, and right now I have 4 employees gone. That's 7 of us out of the 12 that are out of the office. When you're trying to cover lunches and you're trying to just handle the traffic that comes in, you know, it would be great if we knew that, you know, today we were going to file, you know, this many transactions. From day to day, we don't know once we open the doors. And that's not just my office, that's the county as a whole. And so the business that we transact actually overflows to Tracy's office because they start with the certificates of titles in my office. Tracy was correct during COVID, and we still are seeing it now with Laramie County. They are, which is, you know, unfortunate for them, they are weeks behind. I mean, people would rather drive that 45 miles over the hill and back to get their title or to get their plates renewed because they can't afford the wait in Laramie County. And so as you can see today, even with our revenues, probably June is our biggest month. And thankfully, I have a great working relationship with my treasurer and her staff. On June 30th, when everybody closes the doors at 5 o'clock, we're hopeful that we can get out of the office by 7 o'clock to transmit our revenues to Tracy, because we have to complete everything that's been either brought in for recording, for filing under UCC, for titles to be issued, for any transaction, so that we can remit those revenues to her for this fiscal year. And so my staff has been excellent in knowing that that particular day and on the last working day in December, that nobody can be gone, because we need to work together as a team to get the work done, because what we delays treasurer or Tracy in receiving those revenues. And so.
And the DocuPro is just to help with this scanning, and
DocuPro will help us with the title processes so that we can be more efficient in receiving, issuing, and canceling titles.
And then just a question from a meeting ago, there was some sort of software that you wanted to upgrade that was going to work with Tracy. Was that going to be able to be done, or?
I think so. I think that's what's scheduled for in part for next week.
Yeah, I inquired about it yesterday, and of course they want to receive payment before they start the work, because that's their standard policy. So payment won't go out until the 25th. And so, we won't meet our July 1st goal, but that's okay. We just have to work with the vendor, and that's the way they do business. So I just found that out today.
If we don't get that cleaned up, then I know you like the way this is laid out, and it's so efficient, the way this room is laid out. But then we can bulldoze that and make a room that's at least partially useful. So.
It's really interesting. And some of those records, I believe they're history. They are history. Yeah. And so, it looks really, really bad because there's so much. It was worse. Actually, it has really, actually, I met with Kayla and Cammie in January, and we devised a plan. Actually, we were going to come in on a Saturday and just look at what was here and start. I appreciate they're both non-exempt employees and they're willing to do that. But outside of their other responsibilities, I couldn't bring myself. I have tried to come down myself to start going through those records. A lot of them, it'll be really easy because, like I say, it's just, I think, I don't know the thought process of my predecessors, why they kept what they kept. So it's just getting a recycle box down here and pitching what we don't need. But what we do need is historical. I like to preserve them and archive it. And some of it I will keep, but some of it, why can't we just, if we need it, we can refer back to it digitally on the computer like we can now with the records of the Board of County Commissioners. So it's important for me. And like I say, that goal will be achieved because that's a personal goal of mine. It will be achieved by January 2nd, 2023. But I am looking for not only assistance to help me achieve that goal, but more so to allow some remedy for my staff.
And Jackie, legally or statutorily, however, how long do you have to, how far back do you have to keep records?
It's interesting because with the retention schedule, it varies. I tell you, it's with payables, it's 7 years. With certificates of titles, it's 3. With UCCs, it's 10. With, so we have a retention schedule for everything that we have in terms of statutory requirements in the office. For the records of the county commissioners, it depends. If it's an original lease or a contract or a deed, those are permanent records. And so So we will be diligent in making sure that we preserve what needs to be preserved. And I'm not one, you can ask the ladies. It took them a lot of years to finally convince me that I can't keep everything, you know? And I've even gone to archives in Cheyenne and have taken some really old election records from the early 1900s. That's history to me. Why would we not want to restore some of that stuff? And I've made room in the election building for those records. The same thing with marriage license books. A lot of that, once it's digitized, you can get rid of it. You will never see the calligraphy and the beauty in those records if you don't retain them. And when I have the ability to, have a grade school class come into my office and give them a tour of the office, they're so impressed. How can people write the way that they wrote? That form of art is gone. I mean, I can't even get my grandkids to write cursive anymore. It's all, on the computer or, and it's sad and it's a lost art. And maybe the next successor will say, I don't know what Jackie was thinking of, but let's get rid of it. That'll be their decision. But for me, it's history and it's hard to part with that information.
Jackie, that's not something up here at the Heritage Center to help with, or?
I never inquired with the American Heritage Center, but everything has been followed under the retention schedule with the state of Wyoming. So I've worked with archives over at the state. And now actually we used to digitize our records and have a vendor come in and do it. Now Kayla uploads all of those records and sends them to the state. And I don't think if we've gotten a deal from them, it may have been 10 cents or 15 cents. And we send many records on a regular basis regarding land transactions, titles, UCCs, marriage licenses, all of those records that we send to them. So we are moving with technology, but unfortunately, because technology wasn't there in those days, we're dealt with them. And I'm most concerned because when we talk about remodeling this office, you're going to want that room and you're going to want those records removed. And we can store them out in the evidence storage facility. I have talked, and actually a couple of my fellow colleagues said, I've got room in my cage and I would hopefully be able to store the records, but certainly not in the mass volume that we have right now. So if you always wondered what was behind closed doors, those are the records of the board account.
Well, you mentioned them earlier on this year, but I didn't think it was like that. Yes.
Can I answer any further questions?
Do anything?
I don't think so right now.
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. All right. That ends it for the schedule today. Sue asked, and I think it's accurate that I told her that if we're able to get Excel up here and we're able to get that really cool direct aid 1% that worksheet up there, when we make changes to it, it'll update automatically. Yeah. Awesome. Anything else before we go? Sue?
I don't think so. No.
Well, thanks and appreciate it, guys, for helping Kurt and probably Melanie or Stacy. There'll probably be a little bit of help coming that way. So she's back to being in public health. She's from Louisiana, I think. So guessing that it's a little work here is different than in Louisiana. And so there'll probably be some more help along those lines. But yeah, we're got an issue the other day, Jackie. It'll be interesting. There's a road Oswell Road, right? 1866 is what people think that road was. And so having those records might end up being fairly helpful in understanding, you know, the issue with regard to that road, at least one issue with regard to that road. And so I can't imagine there's many much older roads in Albany
Yeah,
County than
exactly.
1866, right? So,
We had some footpaths.
right, right. I guess that was the way you went from Laramie to Steamboat. Before, yeah.
So Jackie, you looked at some, where they are legible? Yes, they are?
Yes. Really, I'm gonna, I'll pull some that, I got.
Peter, you wanting to continue recording the meeting?
Oh, hey, thanks, David. I fell down on my job.
No worries, I'll stop it.
Awesome.
Oh, of course not.